Ladies and gentlemen, we are on page 29 of our slide presentation. And page 17 of 18 for the East Elementary. And I'm going to ask Mr. Luzon to talk a little bit about the East Elementary.
So just as a backdrop for this, I think people just need to, as a reminder, be aware that the school system is actually required by both the state and federal law to provide services for preschool age students who are identified as having special needs. That process actually starts at 2.5 years of age and carries through up to school age, or kindergarten age. So there are students who are actually getting evaluation services from us at 2.5 years of age, and then actual direct services from us between the ages of 3 and 5. In Wareham, we're lucky enough to have a center-based program, and Mary Morgan is the coordinator for that program. It has been a very stable program that we have done, I think, a very good job at seeking additional revenues for, and in fact, as one example, we are one of 4 school systems in the state who have become vendors for early education and care, the Department of Early Education and Care, whereby we are allotted 20 slots so we can have up to 20 children attend this program, and we bill the state for the education for those children. This is our 4th year of having that program, and that's one of the programs that Mary is in the management of in her position as the coordinator for East Wareham Early Childhood Center. So we have really a terrific center-based program. Preventatively, it is one of the best programs I have ever seen as an administrator in special education for the last 11 years. Because there is an awful lot of preventative work for kids and giving them an opportunity at a very early age to get the skills that they otherwise would not get. So I'm going to let Mary talk about the actual budget items and go over her budget, and then we can go over some questions that you may have.
The first slide here is a picture of our building. I regret to say we don't have a picture of our building with our new sign. We have a beautiful new sign that was created by one of our families, and the name of our school has also changed from East Wareham Elementary School to East Wareham Early Childhood Center. And along with the sign came this phrase, Gateway to a Bright Future, which goes along with our Gateway to Wareham phrase as well. One other thing I'd like to mention, I'm not new to Wareham, although I'm new to this position. I've been in Wareham 16 years in working for Wareham Public Schools, and I'm also a resident of Wareham, just so that you're aware of that as well. This is the organizational chart for the East Wareham Early Childhood Center. At the top is the Early Childhood Coordinator. That would be myself, along with being a team chairperson, as well as part of my duties. And as Mr. Lazan said, I also overlook the income eligible project, as well as many other things that go along with my position. I could go on, but I won't on that. Then the next one is the lead teacher. That we have a lead teacher. She's not only the lead teacher, she's also our peer model coordinator and also an integrated school teacher full-time. So she also has multiple responsibilities as well. Underneath that, we have a half, so it would be a 0.25 guidance counselor. At one time, it was half-time guidance counselor, but we now share her with Deaconess. And we also have 6 full-time teachers in addition to the lead teacher. So we have 2 integrated preschool teachers. We have 2 substantially separate teachers. We have 1 income eligible teacher. And we have 1 integrated arts teacher. We also have 1 custodian, a part-time, half-time regular ed, half-time special ed secretary. and also we have 8 paraprofessionals. Going over our accounts, we have 2 accounts because it is primarily a special ed building, but we do have peer models, which are considered under the regular ed. The only differences here in the accounts would be with the pencil paper account, we actually reduced by a difference of $365. And in the computer supplies, we did increase due to a need of new computers. We actually need new computers in all the classrooms. However, we're doing this on a gradual increase, so we're only looking at just 2 new computers with 2 new printers. And I just want to stress the importance of these computers. Our teachers are doing, last year, I'll give you an example, did over 80 evaluations. So we're talking about 80 reports that they have to type up, as well as the specialists do as well. So it's very important that they have access to these computers. And I can tell you right now that we're playing musical chairs with computers for people doing reports. They're trying to see what computer is actually going to work for them, just so you're aware on the need for that. And then the network we have increased because we are looking at putting in wireless within the school. And then out of the special ed accounts, we're looking at an increase in the textbooks, and that is just to because it was originally taken away, we're just putting it back in there. And then the custodial, psychological supplies or psychology supplies, we're just increasing a very small amount just to oversee increases in for like a evaluation testing protocols. That's what I'm looking for. And these are the justifications of the additional requests. The one thing that wasn't mentioned was in the, which was an oversight, and I apologize, was the East Building Maintenance account. There's a shed that we had out there, a metal shed that was destroyed by vandalism, and we're looking to replace it with a wooden shed, more durable shed. And the rest I did mention, which was the computer supplies for the computers, the wireless access, and also restoring funds that were entirely removed in FY13. And this is just a current class size, and I just think that it's important to note, because when you look at it, you think, geez, she only has 12 children in her classroom, and the other one only has 8. I think it's important to note that for public preschool programs that integrate children with and without disabilities, class size shall not exceed 20 with 1 teacher and 1 aide, and no more than 5 students with disabilities. If the number of students with disabilities is 6 or 7, then the class size may not exceed 15 students with 1 teacher and 1 aide. And our classrooms do allow for 6 or 7 children with disabilities in it. So we are looking at not exceeding 15 students with 1 teacher and 1 aide. And I will have to give credit to Mr. Lazan for bringing in the income eligible program, because without that program, we would have been full, and we wouldn't have, we would have been looking at difficulties for spaces for some of our special ed students, because at the time that I arrived and the income eligible program arrived, we were looking at an increase in special ed students coming in, and they're coming in from early intervention, just so you're aware. And we currently, and for the 4 years, this is my 4th year there, every year we're looking at an increase with children coming in from early intervention and looking at ways to accommodate them and make sure that their needs are gonna be met within the program. And just like to end with that, the importance of our preschool, and this quote by the Commissioner of Early Education and Care really does show the importance and how essential preschool really is. And one other thing I wanted to add to it is that the research also shows by the grade 3 that it's harder and harder to remediate children, and that it's extremely important that we catch them young. Not that it can't be done for older children, but it makes our job a lot easier if we do it as early as possible, and it makes it easier on the children as well. And with that, I will end.
I would just like to add to that, seeing how Chris Panarisi dubbed me as the bean counter, that
Boston bean counter.
Right. 100% of our preschool-age children at this point in time are educated within the school district. So as the bean counter, that's a very important thing to me, because what it tells me is that I have, or we have, complete control over making sure that the staff that works with these children are highly qualified, that we get them back into services right away in the most efficient manner possible. But we're in a very good position. Only about less than 1% of our total population receives special education services out of the school district, which I'll talk about in a little while. But 100% of our kids who are 3 and 4 years of age, or preschool age, come out of Head Start, come out of the preschool programs, Kennedy Donovan and others, and Mary's program is able to service all of those kids, and that's a real plus for us, because we're able to then also transition them into our programs, rather than them being in private programs and trying to get them back to the public schools. So, Mary didn't mention, but she works a great deal with the feeder agencies, including Head Start, as well as the local preschools. So we know the kids well before they come into our program, and so my summary statement, I think, is that our preschool services are very, very stable. When we made the decision to go ahead and change the name this year to East Wareham Early Childhood Center, and recognize that the building has worked out very well as a preschool, a center-based preschool, part of that really was that we have now a five-year track record of that program working well for us and managing those numbers very well. So I think that it's in very good shape, and I think we see the increases as relatively small increases for the population served.
Any questions for Mary or for Bob?
Kenny?
Hi, unless I missed it, there was no mention of the condition of the building as the other schools, so I'm assuming that there are no major issues at this.
At this time,
Correct.
So we technically can move Deacon's and Minot there.
sure.
Thank you. Other than the shed
Right.
that's going to be replaced.
Right.
Just the one thing on the shed, did we make an insurance claim on that? Was that worth it for it versus the deductible?
I'm not sure. That's something that would have happened with Anna and
Right.
with her not
Okay.
being there.
All
I
right.
don't know, but I can look into it.
Well, my shed wasn't covered, but,
For vandalism?
yeah, it wasn't covered. But you can try.
It's not a permanent attachment.
I'll let whoever wants to handle this, feel free. 2 questions. One is, Bob, could you elaborate on what you meant by 100% of what?
So 100% of all preschool-age children who require special education services that live in the town of Wareham are serviced through our early education center. In other words,
Wow.
we're not sending any children out of district at the preschool age level at this time, at this point in time.
Okay. But someone might theoretically be sending their child to another location But if they're doing that, they're absorbing the special needs of that child on their own.
Yes, which would be
Unusual.
unusual, because all the feeder agencies, Head Start and others, would send them to us.
Okay.
So that they're on our log.
Got it. Mary, would you go back to the slide where you show all the children that you have?
Oh, sure.
The-
I can figure it out.
I just want to understand the revenue associated
is.
with this program. Because this program isn't eligible for Chapter 70, for example.
Right.
So, of the 105, that's your current census? Of the 105, are you receiving revenue payment of some sort from some location
Yes.
for those 100, for every
Not,
student?
and not everyone, about half probably.
Half.
Right.
Who's paying for the other half?
Special ed.
Those that have special needs,
Right.
we are required by law.
From age 3?
Yes.
From age 3
Three.
Actually,
to
2%.
provide.
Actually, yeah.
Okay.
So-
So that's part of the special education budget.
That is correct. And so we have model students, instead of doing this as completely pull-out, substantially separate, we have an inclusive program with model children. And so I don't know if it's exactly 50%, but the model students who do not have special needs and come to the school pay a tuition of
The most they pay is $10 a day.
$10 a
It's a
day.
sliding scale.
Okay, and that was my question. You're spending approximately almost $1 million, 900 and some odd thousand dollars. How much revenue is being generated by the special ed students
Right.
that we have to care for?
So two funding sources. One are the private costs,
Here.
about $10 a day for those who can afford it. That's a relatively small amount of money, in the ballpark of about 25 to 30,000 a year.
Okay,
The larger amount is this income eligible project, which we're in our 4th of 6 years, and the revenues have ranged from $126,000 a year to $154,000 a year.
okay, so even taking the upper end and the 25,000 or so,
Correct.
we're less than 200,000 of the $1 million.
Correct.
The rest of it is absorbed by your special education budget
Yes.
because we're required to do so.
Correct.
If we didn't have the Early Childhood Center and we were forced to farm out to other locations around
Right.
the town, the state, whatever, can you tell us approximately how much that would cost us?
Well, a conservative figure would be about $35,000 a year per student to be in a collaborative program.
35,000 times 50?
Correct.
Okay, I guess we just made the business case, didn't we? Okay, thank you.
Plus transportation.
Plus,
Right.
no small issue.
A-
Right.
Any other questions for Mary? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
Mr. Tatro, please come on down. This is non-net, but as part of the full-day experience, we asked Mr. Tatro to come in to talk about his budget request as well. And Jeff, I think that clicker there, if you push the top
Bottom
button,
button.
it should go to the next slide. Try it again.
Bottom button.
Oh, there we go. So, we have our transportation organizational chart, and why don't you describe who and what they are?
I'm there as the transportation manager, and then there's the secretary. Underneath me is our lead mechanic. Underneath Ted is our part-time staff and our other full-time mechanic. And then we have two different groups of drivers. We have union drivers and we have non-union drivers. So we currently have 13 non-union substitute drivers, as well as 12 monitors. Those are non-union positions. Union positions, there are 30 union drivers and their steward is kind of the lead driver, so there's one, but she's included in the 30. So that's who's in my building
And on the roads.
and on the roads, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is my requested items for the budget there. It's 1.601 million we're asking for to operate the department. The variances will be on the last page. I'm sure we'll talk about them there.
All right, so if we're looking at our multi-page document, page 13 of 18 will bring you to transportation. And page 14 of 18 is where it ends for totals. And almost all the expenses are broken in half, so that half of, like a salary for the manager is in regular ed, and half of it is in special ed. So that's how these accounts are done. So then we have special ed drivers, and we have regular ed drivers, and all the way through, you have both sets of accounts. So that's just a little explanation. Why don't you continue, Jeff?
So just to be clear, since it's such a huge number, we should net the regular salary increase with the sped salary decrease to really get a reflection on what's going on.
Correct.
Because
Well,
one is a
we
huge
re-
increase and the other is a huge
So we
decrease.
reallocated some of the pay, because homeless pay used to come out of sped account. We now have a separate account for the homeless, so you'll see there's a big shift in that account and a decrease in the sped account. So to more appropriate allocate the pay where it should go to.
So that, if I am correct, looking on page 14 of 18, the last account number, which is system student transportation, that went from 30,000 in 2012 to 164,635 in 13, and then 130 in 214, is where the McKinney-Vento money went.
Correct, that's the McKinney-Vento money went into that account.
What is that account? Say that again.
The McKinney-Vento, all right, that is for homeless transportation, because
Thank you.
McKinney-Vento is a federal regulation that requires us to transport a child who has been put into some sort of shelter in Wareham back to their location where they came from, Brockton, Situate, wherever, and we're responsible for 50% of that payment, and the other town is responsible for 50%. So when you hear us talk about, and somebody may ask the question, we get about $200,000 in revenue into our revolving account in transportation. The other 50, when we get that payment of the 50% from the other community, it goes into that revolving account,
Okay.
okay? That is then used to offset the budget deficit that normally occurs. Continue.
This slide or go to the next slide?
Well, why don't you talk about if there are any other accounts?
Well, the variances will be on the 4th page of this. So
All right,
if you want
so-
to flip through real quick.
Yeah, very good.
This page just shows the numbers. This is in-district programs, number of students that we service, and as you just heard about, the pre-K through 12th graders for special ed and regular transportation, special transportation and regular transportation for in-district only, and the number of students that we service at each level. That's all that page is. Just
And
to
these aren't theoretical numbers, these are actual head counts.
These are the numbers that are currently in our Versatrans system, so they're as good as the information that we get. So yes, these are actual numbers based on 2 weeks ago.
But by that I mean, you transport these children.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, could it have fluctuated 1 or 2 by now? Yes, it could have, but these are actual numbers, yes.
Sorry, what is PA, PP, PF, AF?
PA is preschool halftime, They get released during the middle of the day.
AM, so.
AM.
Preschool AM,
AM,
PM,
preschool
PM.
Right, and then full-time.
And then
Preschool
PP is full day
and kindergarten
preschool.
is full.
And then kindergarten is full day. We have one student we transport midday, but it's a special exception. So I did not put that, he's counted in full day, but there is one we release with the preschool.
And that is one of the savings of going to the full-day kindergarten, is that we don't have, how many buses did we have to put on the road before for the kindergarten?
We had 8, and we're down to 3.
Okay, so that's 5 buses that are not on a midday run.
Correct.
Because we have full-day, which is a savings.
Yeah, the only middays we do now are out of East.
So that 2836, that's a very high percentage of the total students in the district. Yes?
That's, last I knew, the district was somewhere around 3,000.
That's a little less than that, isn't it?
Right.
39 something.
Well, and today it's about 2,900.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's well over 90% of the students in the district are being served through the transportation department.
Correct. Does every single senior take the bus every single day?
No,
No,
I understand. I understand.
But, yes, this is who we would service, yes.
I guess I'm surprised on 2 levels. I'm surprised that there aren't more kids that are closer to the school so that they'd be literally walking to school. That surprised me. And then the other level is, I'm surprised that at the high school that, you know, all my tennis kids seem to have their own cars.
Like I said, not every student would be serviced every day.
I
but
understand.
There does have to be space allocated for
Understood.
those students.
Okay.
Right, and there's still 1,200 kids that are still on their own. That's,
Where are you getting that
Well,
number?
it's only a couple hundred, 300.
oh, yeah, that's right, sorry. I was looking.
Okay. Derek?
Dave, if, on some of the special transportation, if a parent chooses to transport their own child, we still have to pay them their mileage.
Correct.
Yeah. So
And that's
we
a
don't stay
limited number now, and they're not included in my numbers here, like I said, because those would only be out of district.
Okay.
None of these numbers include our out-of-district students. So this is all in-district. The only parents that get paid are out of district.
Okay.
So those are not counted here.
Thank you.
And those out of district are counted in your totals, aren't they?
Yeah,
So that makes that an even higher percentage.
correct.
Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
And this is the variance page. So I think we already discussed the reallocation of the homeless out of the special ed into a separate homeless account. The OC ed account we increased because there's more school to career students, which are high school students that we transport to job sites on a daily basis, as well as the young adult program. Those 2 salary amounts come out of that account. The outside contract, the Bristol Aggie students are in the next account. The decrease of almost 30% in sped salary, like I said, that was shifted to the homeless.
Question.
Question.
How many homeless students do we have in the system?
You'd have to do a day and time count,
Right.
and that count can range anywhere from a low of about 20 to a high of probably in the area of 55. That doesn't mean that all of 55 are going in or out of the district. They may be homeless but still housed within the district.
Thank you.
2 years ago, we had 43. Last year, we had 60
That you were transporting?
that we transport, and I think this year up to about 26, somewhere in the mid-20s already.
Yeah, we'll get
And
higher.
we just got some more coming in starting next week, so it's the homeless transportation is ongoing. Sometimes they go for 180 days. Sometimes it's strictly a 30 to 45-day placement, so they're still counted in our numbers, but we may not transport them the entire year, because that's how the system goes.
But it does sound like from a McKinney-Vento revenue perspective, you're running a little lower than last year.
At this moment,
Yes.
at this moment, yes.
Well, January 3rd to January 3rd.
I didn't compare the numbers to last January 3rd, I don't know.
Okay.
There tends to be a dramatic increase in homeless students this time of year. We tend
January
to
to
see a
April.
significant increase between January and I was going to say March, but April. I mean, it really seems to explode to where we rapidly increase our numbers.
I guess from Derek's perspective, we want to be able to give him as good a number as possible in terms of anticipating what that revenue is
Of
going
course.
to be.
Mhm.
Whenever you feel comfortable making a good estimate.
It's one of those difficult things. We can only make our
Understood.
best educated guess.
Understood.
So,
You know, it's hard to hit a moving target.
of course. You know, we can only go by the past, and unfortunately with this particular bill, the past isn't that
Right,
big of a time period.
right.
So it's kind of limited. We just need to go with what we have. I mean, right now, I think we're probably on target to be close to what we had last year.
Okay.
I think the next one probably is the aging fleet.
Yeah, in both of our supply accounts, you can see a significant increase. We need to continue to repair the vehicles that we have. We have mechanics that diligently work on these vehicles every single day to ensure that they are safe every time they hit the road. That does come with an expense. We do have some structural work that it's an ongoing process that we do that's expensive. Hopefully, if we get the money that we need this year, we'll be able to start purchasing new vehicles through our revolving account. So we have a plan in place going forward that we can replace 3 to 4 vehicles every year. But as long as we have the fleet that we have, we are going to continue to have repair issues that go along with maintaining the fleet, as well as fuel and, you know, any supplies that go along with that as well.
So just to accent for Mr. Tatro, the bottom line, when we look at the 124,769 increase, is to fund this without having an inherent deficit. So if you want to know what it costs to currently run the department with the age of the vehicles we have, it's $1,600,000. We have been funding it at $1,350,000, $40,000, somewhere around that. This year we're up because of McKinney-Vento to $1,476,000. If we left it, so if we level funded this at $1,476,000, then whatever deficit is going to be there at the end of the year, you're going to use the revolving account to fill. What Jeff is trying to say is, if we funded it appropriately, we could then take the $200,000 in the revolving account and have a plan for replacing our vehicles. You know, another way of saying it is, you put in a separate line item for replacement of vehicles as another expense, as an operating expense. Not necessarily in this section of the budget, but in another section. You have, you know, changing vehicles, and it's worth X dollars that's funded each year, so you can plan out. We currently have, because of the last town meeting, I think it's 55,000 that came in for replacement of vehicles. Plus, we had left, after buying some used vehicles, approximately 25,000, I think. So 30, somewhere around there. So we have about $90,000 to go out and look for some used vehicles that are hopefully in better shape than our current vehicles. So they'll be 4 years old, and we pay $35,000 for them. But without having some plan in the future, you have to keep seeing that supply account and the time for mechanics going up, because you replace the railings under the bus, which rust out, and there's a cost, so, I don't know if you wanna talk about the,
There are two, assuming privatization doesn't yield a savings, and I don't think there's anybody in this room who wishes it will, but I personally don't believe it will, but it will, either it will or it won't. But let's assume for the moment it doesn't. There are two other alternatives to the status quo that could yield savings. Both are being priced out. One involves just doing what the law mandates, which is K through 6 and 2 miles or greater from the school, and that would clearly yield a savings. And then a midpoint on that would be K to 8, but maintaining the radius around which we'll still pick up, which is a little bit more generous than 2 miles for safety reasons, because there are a lot of places that don't have sidewalks, winters, et cetera, et cetera. Both of those scenarios are being priced out. I am not in any way, shape, or form speaking for the school committee in terms of whether we would even accept either one of those alternatives as good for the school district for a variety of reasons, attendance, safety, congestion, you name it. But those are being looked at as a potential to save money. That's really all I would have to say on that, because I don't have any data yet, but we will be receiving data as to what those savings might represent. But they are savings with sacrifice. They are reducing the services to the people of this town, to the parents specifically of this town.
It's books or buses type thing.
That's one way of putting it.
On a day like today, how many students stay home at 18 degrees if you're busing K through 8? Keep that in mind.
Well,
And keep in mind that
it wasn't,
attendance,
in a day and an age, it wouldn't be any more or any less.
keep in mind that attendance is something that
Well, we gotta,
we have attendance markers that we have to meet, or else we get, I'm not sure exactly what the penalty is, but we get told you're not meeting your attendance standards from an NCLB perspective. I don't know if it goes beyond that. And there's no question it would impact attendance. Yes, I walked a long way to school, and maybe a lot of people here walked a long way to school, but for a variety of reasons, it's no longer the 1960s or the 50s.
the 30s.
Any other questions for Mr. Tatro or anyone else sitting here about transportation?
Dave, if this was the 1.6 million roughly on there, then we'd be using the revolving fund to purchase the new vehicles. And as the new vehicles come in, we'd probably see a decrease in some of the costs, but that would be fine, because obviously every year we have increases from salary and
Labor
everything.
and so forth.
Yeah, so it'd bring you out at least a few years on that. Would you say?
If we were able to implement this program where we're purchasing buses, do I think in year one that we would see a reduction? No.
Right.
But I think after 2 or 3 years of, now we've replaced maybe 12, 15 buses, of course, our supply account is gonna come down, because we won't be purchasing so many big, expensive repair items. So yes, do I think it's gonna be in year one? No. Do I think in year 3? Yes.
So in a perfect world where we, instead of seeing this, we'd be sort of just starting level for a few years.
For a few years, and then that supply line, in theory, should start coming down.
That's great.
Question, you mentioned the used buses at 35,000,
Yes.
so that means you have to get it through town meeting every year. $25,000 or more, or a new bus period, but 25,000 more in equipment.
Right.
Yes.
And in both, and would probably use the same technique that we used, which was at last April's town meeting, we asked to have $60,000 in our revolving account encumbered to use towards buying vehicles. And so we're using some of that now. But yes, that's how we would have to do that.
So the total operating budget for the school bus itself, you're at 1.6, $250,000 to $300,000 in the revolver, in the sped income, school bus. So we're somewhere between 1.9 and $2 million. Plus whatever, you might have some in-kind stuff in there, and stuff.
Call it 2 million.
Yeah. You might have another couple $100,000 laying around.
What was that figure for?
Well, you've got right now, for 14, you got 1.6.
Oh, right.
And then
Yes.
you're using the revolving account to offset a lot of costs as
Yeah.
well. And that grants 250 to 3.
But the way it's working now, I mean, we're running deficits, even using the revolver.
Yeah, but at those numbers,
No,
we
no,
wouldn't be.
no, this is ideal. This is great.
I wouldn't call it ideal, but it's much better.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, it's
Great.
Yeah.
We don't work on
Well,
ideal.
it puts you into survival mode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't put you in a fixed mode.
But it's better than where we're at.
I'm not disagreeing,
Yeah.
I'm just saying it.
You know, right. No, it is, but I mean, survival mode is better than where we've been at.
That's what I mean.
We're on the same page.
Yeah, the survival mode is a
Absolutely.
problem, because it takes us 4 or 5 years to get past it.
Right.
Any other?
Nothing. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Kathy, come on down. Kathy, there is a button there, push the bottom button on that, it should move your slides down to get to your first slide. Ah, very good. This is Kathy Moore-Minkle. Kathy is the principal of the cooperative school, cooperative junior, senior high school.
And a graduate of Wareham High School.
Not another student.
And she jumped into the breach last year,
Yes.
and we're very thankful for that.
Thank you.
So Kathy, take it away. Or, first of all, let me just find for folks where you are on this, because it says junior, senior high, I think, is what it says. Page 6, I'm told.
Well, 7 is the top of page 7.
5. All right, so if we take a look at the bottom of page 6 of 18 and the top of 7 of 18, you will see the junior, senior high school accounts, cooperative
Okay.
school.
The school with the water view.
The school with the water view. Very good.
As long as it's not water leaks, I'm fine with that.
So as you'll see on the organizational chart, it shows the 3 pathways of the cooperative school. The full-day program, the PM1 pathway, and the PM2 diploma program. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the...
They're not. Why don't you just give them a little snapshot of each one?
The day program is a full-day program for 7 through 9, 10th graders. It runs the same as the middle school time, 7:35 to 2:02. The PM1 program is a program that was actually begun by Bob Luzon with the SPED department as a support for students in PM2 who were on an IEP. And it's kind of blossomed into a program where we offer online, students who are taking online classes, we offer them support. We also have tutoring for students who have been excluded from our day program. And also, as students were leaving their comprehensive high school, say a student left a school or the Wareham High School in October, end of October or November, and they were too late to register for the PM2 program, we took those students in and kept them in a school environment in the afternoon with offering them online courses. And then the PM2 program is our diploma program, our night school program. Currently, the Wareham Cooperative School services over 135 students. We benefit the sending school as some of the students can be disruptive in their sending school, typically Wareham Middle School and Wareham High School. but we also offer them a small community to learn. If you note the law that's effective July 2014, school districts will have to provide expelled and suspended students with educational opportunities like alternative schools or online learning. Wareham Public Schools already has that in place. In fact, just this week, I received 2 phone calls from other districts who want to come look at our program and see how the pathways have been set up.
Excuse me, Kathy, before you go on, could you just mention how long the school has been in operation? Do you-
The school, as it is now, has been in operation. This is the 7th year? 7th, yeah.
6 or 7?
6 or 7, yeah. I think, is there a slide missing or no? The descriptive? I don't know if it was there.
That, you mean the program description?
Yeah,
That was the one before it, so go the other way.
okay, sorry. Okay, as you see that most of our students have been retained 1 or more years. Many students are children of parents who were not successful in school. What we did this year is we looked at the data of students at the middle school and the high school and invited them to come to the cooperative school. In trying to change the perception of the cooperative school, we wanted it to be more of an invitational school, a school that could help students who were struggling to be more successful. I think with programs like our preschool now in RTI, that eventually that retention line will go down.
Kathy, just while you're on that slide. So those are percentages.
Right.
So that currently in your, is the first group the day,
First is the
is
day.
Is AM, all right, the full day program, that over 70% of the students in that program have been retained before.
Correct. And over 60 have a parent who has not received a high school diploma. And then in the PM1 and PM2 program, you can see it's just about 70% that have been retained.
Thank you.
Kathy, I'm doing the acronym analysis for people, so if you don't know what those are, DCF is Department of Children and Families, and DYS is Department of Youth Services.
Kathy, where would these kids be if this school didn't exist?
Well, I think some of them would be in the middle school. Some of them would not be in school at all. We have had students, we're doing our registration right now for PM2, and we have had students register. Last night was our first night, that have dropped out of their comprehensive high school and in October and have just been waiting to enroll in the PM2 program. So a lot of them would just be hanging around, sitting at home.
These are dropouts, and if they were in their high school, middle school, they would be students placed in a revolving door. They would come in, they would get suspended for misbehavior, they would go out for X number of days, come back in, do the same behavior, go out again. They need to be taught in a particular manner that acknowledges their specialness, just as we do with special needs students, but they don't, majority of them don't have IEPs. And this has been our, we call it pathways to success, in that if you're a child from 7th grade on, you have an option of either going to the comprehensive high school or middle school, or to the cooperative junior senior high school, or to West Academy. So we have 3 options for children to try to save them rather than have them go to out-of-district placements or to become dropouts. Tom?
What happens to this, their school year is 180 days or whatever it is. What happens to the building in the summertime?
This particular building is not used, well, actually, we have a summer program, right?
There have been summer programs there.
We have
I don't know
had
if
some
there
summer
will be.
programs
Is
there.
that revenue producing?
No, it hasn't been. Because if we put a price on it, many of the children would not come. So it's been an open, kind of, usually funded by grants. So it's usually been a revenue neutral kind of thing when we've had summer programs.
It could be revenue producing if we offered online courses to out-of-district students. I don't know if the high school does that. And we charge them a fee like we do with students from other high schools who come, who are still part of their high school but come to take 1 or 2 courses. And the online is growing. Being fiscally responsible and trying to cut everywhere was my goal. I think it's important to note, though, that dropout prevention is an element of economic recovery. Dissolving a dropout program is penny wise and pound foolish. The costs, the overall costs, are much greater to society down the road. Most of the budget at the cooperative school has been cut. The only addition would be the textbooks, which were cut last year. We're in dire need of textbooks at the cooperative school. And the other increase was building maintenance, which we had a lot of improvements that we hadn't planned on this year through the new manager, business manager, building manager. We had to do our town ramp, our ramp and our lighting and our
Because of the
sign.
building department change in leadership, certain things were, we were required to change in order to open for business.
Right. So
Not
those were our
saying that they didn't
increases.
need to be done.
So you can say anybody out there that's a homeowner, even the school's not exempt.
Correct.
And the last slide shows our school choice. We have, on the average, 30 students who are school choice, students that come from other districts to go to our day program or PM2 program. And with that $150,000 revenue, we pay the administration for the PM2 program, 16 teachers for the PM2, a teacher for PM1, 2 teachers at the cooperative day school, a security monitor for the PM2 program, and transportation home from the PM2 program. We also have a revolving account with PM2, which course fees from either Wareham High School students taking a course, or out-of-district students taking 1 or 2 courses, book fees, graduation fees are deposited into that revolving account, and we buy our supplies through that account and pay for the PM2 secretary.
So can you just explain to me the teachers, the PM2, the 16? So days per week, so they work, each of the 16 works 1 day a week?
1 day a week.
Are they all teaching different courses? And that's the reason why, or I'm just thinking for the consistency of the students that are.
They're all teaching different courses. That would be 16 different courses that
Okay.
were offered.
So if a child was taking a course in PM2, and if I was taking, I don't know, let's call it Algebra 2, I would only have that on one evening?
Yes,
Okay, for a period of how much time?
18 weeks.
But how long of a day? I mean,
2.5 hours.
2.5 hour block. Okay.
The rest they do at home.
And then
Right.
there's at-home.
There's at-home work.
What do we know about the alumni from this place? Are they, how do they, what do they look like when they're 30?
The school
Yeah,
hasn't
go ahead.
been in existence that long. We originally, Dr. Rabinovich and I worked with Dr. Collins when he was here and Mr. Palladino to write this proposal. The seed money was a grant 6 years ago. And then the grant has slowly diminished each year to, I think now we're down to about $5,000. Each year there is a little more money available from the state to support the program. So we only have 6 years of data. Of the students who enroll in the program, the largest percentage, we have averaged every year 58 to 59 students graduate and go on to employment. So these are students who were dropouts. We've had students who actually had dropped out from Wareham High School and came back at the age of 20, 21, finished their coursework, and have gone into jobs. Now, the jobs they go into, are the whole spectrum. We have had a small percentage of graduates, I would say about 5 to 10% each year, who go on to a community college or a trade program. Sometimes it's higher. We are trying to increase that through these online courses that Kathy referred to. We started a pilot program with a vendor called E2020, which offers accredited courses taught by licensed and highly qualified teachers so that the students can take the course online while they're in the school and then continue at their own rate at home if they have computer and internets at home or in the library. That pilot began 2 years ago and it has increased. It has been a revenue producer in that it has brought in more choice students because they are able to take courses that we wouldn't be able to have faculty members for. And that program goes year-round. And that was what she was referring to for the summer program. We actually charge tuition in the summer for students to participate in that online program. And that is the program we've expanded down this year for foreign language here at the middle school. So it's a growing program. The advantage to having this is, yes, we have students staying in school. Yes, we have truly reduced our dropout rate significantly in the 6 years that the school was open. We've cut it in half by more than half. We're almost 2/3, so less than a third of what we were 6 years ago. And now with the new law on the books, that we are going to be required to provide programming for students who are expelled or suspended. We already have the program in place. If we did not, then we'd be looking at possibly one of the collaborative programs or something that would cost us in excess of $20,000 per year per student.
Sounds good.
So it's a unique population. It's a very intense population.
The interesting thing about all that wonderful information is it doesn't answer your question and the question that I have had for years, which is what actually happens to our graduates when they're 25 or 30? How many of them graduate from college? How many of them are independent, productive, successful adults? We have, frankly, no idea because maintaining a connection to them is actually far more difficult than you might imagine. We actually got a very limited report based on a very limited amount of data, what was it, a year or so ago? Significant effort was put into trying to get it, and it was just really difficult to find out what happens to people. Now the question is, let's assume you found out, and the results weren't what you would like. What would you do differently?
Change the program. I mean, whatever. You have to keep trying.
Well, you keep trying, but I would argue we're trying now. We're trying now to make every single student as successful as they can be.
I mean, I'm assuming you know a social security number that's good, and with the way information is more and more available, we're gonna find out about what's happening to these people, even if they end up in Leavenworth or wherever.
Well, yes, that is the nadir, isn't it? Yeah. They're not all Kathys, though. That we know.
It sounds very good, Kathy. I
Thank you.
applaud what you're doing.
Derek?
The question I had, the revenue coming in, how are we receiving that revenue? Is that from the cherry sheet, or is that the?
That comes in and goes into a revolving account, but I think it does come in off the cherry sheet.
So this is on top of the actual budgeted
Yes,
amount? So it's
that is
100
correct.
Okay.
I had a similar question. Are those two separate revolving accounts there? The 150,000 and the 15,000?
One is choice, and the other one is the PM2 adult education, whatever we call it. Yeah, that is a separate
Choice is
revolver.
clearly choice.
Right.
Yeah, because that's what I'd say, that, in almost a technical way, this isn't being funded out of your budget except for a
That is
small
correct.
part. It's funding itself almost.
Well,
But remember, choice is a net.
Well, that's one of the things right now that we're trying to.
Choice is net of out
No.
and in.
no,
No,
Well, it
right
is on
now,
the cherry sheet.
no.
no,
I'll-
we're absorbing the hit on the.
It doesn't fund itself. There's
Yeah.
$415,000 in here that all comes out of LEA.
Okay.
On top of this other money.
That isn't what I was saying.
No, I understand what you were saying.
Yeah, that was just what I wanted to figure out on there, so that's coming in on.
Yes.
And the 30 students, those are all choice students?
Yes.
Yes.
And where are they coming from in general? What are the towns?
We are the only diploma program, PM diploma program, from here all the way to Provincetown. And then Plymouth, we have students from Plymouth, Sandwich,
Sandwich.
Middleborough, Carver,
Okay.
Bourne.
Mattapoisett,
All right.
Rochester.
All right, thanks.
Dr. Sylvia.
Thank you, Kathy, for your efforts. We have some really good alternative programs in the system, and some have been very, very creative, and others, have stemmed from necessity. But I think this one has been creative from a couple of different fronts. So I think in terms of the district, it's a gold star. But my question is, most of the PM2 people, almost all of the PM2 people, don't receive any benefits. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. And what about the ABE grants, Adult Basic Education? Are they still around?
That is ending. It may have already ended.
Do we do anything
as
with
of
that?
December 31st. It is gone
It's gone.
because they have changed their testing to be at a computerized center rather than having local people doing it as we used to.
So how do these adults get competent in each subject area? Online?
Well, no, they have tutoring, I know, at the library, I believe.
They do? Oh.
For,
Because we had a tremendous ABE program years ago. I know, because I was a co-director.
I taught in
And
it.
it's sort of like just disappeared. And I've
The
been
grant money
talking about this
disappeared.
at the school committee level for a long time. And we can seriously look at this from a couple of different perspectives. But what I want to share with you is the fact that we have a tremendous amount of adult population in Wareham that is undereducated. And I think that it would serve us very, very well if we could put together some programs at the PM2 program specifically designed for these folks. Employment skills, dressing for success, banking, money in banking, all of the things and skills that they really don't have. And in many cases, through no fault of their own, that could be augmented at the PM program. So I would strongly suggest that maybe to take it even one step further, to try to get a nucleus of the adult population in the PM program.
We have discussed bringing in certificate programs for adults.
yeah, it's under consideration.
Great.
Thank you, Kathy, very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Miss Miranda?
I've also asked Stacy Rogers to come with,
Very good.
with Wendy to talk about West Wareham Academy. And as they're,
Go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as they're getting settled in, and Wendy, it's the bottom button that will get you to your charts. West Wareham Academy was developed actually presented to school committee as a proposal in January of 2009, and began with a pilot in April of 2009 with a small number of students. The funding for that came from, and the problem and the reason that it was created was that we had many students that we weren't able to provide services for within the district. And so we looked at bringing some of those students back. We had particularly 8 or 9 students at that time who were receiving their education out of district at, about $30,000 at that time per student, plus the cost of the transportation. So we began that program as a pilot in April of 2009, as a partnership with the Walker Foundation, as I was mentioning earlier. And so we're now in our 4th year of West Wareham Academy being in place. So just as a backdrop, that's where we are. And Wendy, go ahead.
Okay. And I'll just, we're on page 16 of 18 on our multi-page document. This is called the Academy, so it's West Wareham Academy, but on the accounting software, it's either West Academy or Academy, so,
Where is it? West
where
Academy.
this, if
The old
you,
West Elementary School.
Going out, past Claire.
Main Street.
Claire.
if you go past the Deacon's School
Yeah.
and stay on Main Street,
Right.
and just stay on Main Street, and you go by where the water,
The Tremont Dam area?
well, maybe that's a Tremont, I'm
No,
not
no,
sure.
no.
It's a
No,
water
other direction.
supply. It's-
Beyond Deacon's.
Gotcha.
Keep heading out towards Rochester.
Okay.
There's a pond on the right and the left, actually. Right after that, there's an old school building up on the right-hand side. That's west.
And so it's an old elementary school. This is, we used to have the kindergarten students that are now located at Deacon's. We're at West. Then we closed, and we moved them back to, and then we reopened, and now we have this special education school, day school program.
It's not the same school that Kathy just came from.
No,
No.
no.
Okay, then where was Kathy's school?
Right over by the Boys and
Across the
Girls.
Kathy-
street from the middle school.
In the old playhouse.
Next to the Boys and Girls
The
Club.
Gateway Playhouse.
Gotcha. Now I'm all set. I know where you guys are.
Yeah, we're on the other side of
You're-
town.
yeah, I know.
We have
The
more
old West Wareham
schools than
School.
money.
The West Wareham School, okay, I know that.
Had to say that, Ken.
I thought
Thanks, Ken.
Kathy came from where she is.
All right.
No,
So-
two separate programs.
Gotcha.
This is Miss Wendy Miranda, and Wendy is our clinical director of West Wareham Academy. She will tell you about the school and then go through her budgets. So, Wendy?
Okay.
And Stacy Rogers, who's
And
our
Stacy Rogers.
special education supervisor.
Okay. We can start with the organizational chart. As you can see, it's, we have a small staff, myself, and I have a .5 secretary. We share with the Wareham High School. We have a school adjustment counselor who is our Walker partnership. We have a behavior interventionist who is also through our Walker partnership. We have a special ed math teacher, a science teacher, English, a .25 PE teacher. Mr. Perry is a PE teacher. He is kind of like spread out through the district between the high school and us and Minot and Deacon's. So he's .5 with us. We have 2.5 paraprofessionals and a .5 custodian. West Academy is a therapeutic day school program for students who have severe social emotional disabilities. They've been diagnosed by psychiatrists and by medical doctors. And most of those students also have learning disabilities, but the primary disability would be their social emotional disabilities. We provide services for those students in districts. I think that's the most important part of our program, is that we can keep our kids in our community. As Bob said before, West Academy was started, our kids were serviced outside of the district, which on average was $35,000 per student to be sent out of district. Not to mention students weren't being serviced in their community. They were sent to out-of-district programs where they were getting a certificate of completion
not an actual high school diploma. So I think what sets West Wareham Academy apart is that our students actually get to participate in the high school activities, be part of the Wareham community. We've had students participate, actually even on the football team this year. And students get to graduate with a high school diploma and go on to college. I actually just got an email yesterday from one of the students who graduated last year to let me know he did his first term of college, and it was successful.
Wow.
So him and his family are extremely grateful to Wareham and to West Wareham Academy, and could not say enough about the services that were provided for him and his family. The other senior that graduated last year, his parents also called, and he has a full-time job. And for family reasons, he was going to enroll in a certificate program, but for family purposes and financial reasons, he had to go to work. But he is planning also to go to Cape Cod Community. We brought out the students last year to the community colleges, so I thought that that was extremely helpful. It kind of got the kids rolling and thinking about, okay, I can do this, I can go to college. Massasoit has a great special ed program. Cape Cod Community has a great special ed program. So we partnered with them, and that's how actually one of our kids is at Cape Cod Community now.
I'm sorry, Wendy, when you say a community college has a special education program, what do you mean?
They have services that are provided for students who have special needs also at the colleges.
Is that through age 23 like other things?
No, it would go throughout their college, however long it takes them to complete their degree.
Is it legally mandated, or are they just doing it because they think it's a good thing?
I don't think it's legally mandated, no. I think that these two colleges actually offer it, Cape Cod Community and Massasoit.
Many actually do. Landmark College is one example that is very, very much geared to.
Oh, yeah, and Curry, too.
children's-
Curry has the PAL program.
Right.
They offer tutoring for kids. Cape Cod, really, when we went out to Cape Cod, they actually talked about and tailored it to kids who had social emotional disabilities.
Jeff, the difference would be that they would not have IEPs. The
Got it.
IEP ends at 22 or graduation.
Okay, thank you.
Also, our students who are in district, maybe at the middle school or the high school, who through the IEP team process are not making the progress that is required within the regular ed setting, there might be a 45-day assessment period that students, through a team meeting and through a team process, students come to West Wareham for a 45-day assessment period where we would do a variety of kind of assessments, from observation to functional behavior assessments to psych evals, educational performance evals, achievement. Otherwise, we would be, if we didn't have West Academy, we would be sending those students out, again, to out-of-district placements for those functional behavior assessments.
Could I just mention, because it's so important to understand this when you're looking at a program like West Wareham Academy, that there are really two flows of students in and out of public school systems. One of them certainly is that we have kids who, for whatever reason, maybe 8th grade, 9th grade, ran into a difficult time. In the past, they were placed out of district. And it was very tough for a kid who's going to school, say, in Middleborough or down on the Cape, to get back into their home school, their home high school. So this allowed us to be able to have the kids literally in town, and be able to actually take courses within our high school if they were ready to do so. But the other big one, and this is very much part of Stacy's job in both directions of this flow, so as she's looking at kids who are ready to come back, it allows us to bring kids back much, much faster than we otherwise would, because we have West Wareham Academy for them to go to. In the other direction, we have kids that begin to bubble up in the middle school and the high school who are struggling for lots of different reasons, and our only alternative in the past was to have them go to an outside placement. And now we're able to have West, whether it's, as Wendy was just mentioning, for a diagnostic placement for 45 days, or for them to have a longer-term placement at West without ever having to have them go to a collaborative or a private school program.
Class size and the population. Our current numbers right now are 16. We're licensed for 24 students. Currently, we have 16 students at West. 3 students are there for 45-day placement from the middle school. 2 of the students are tuition-in students from out of district, and 7 of the students are Wareham students that are from either the middle school or the high school who have transitioned over to West Academy. We also had 4 students who transferred into Wareham through the foster care system. They came into our district with day school IEPs. So if we didn't have West Wareham Academy, automatically those students would have to be placed out in their out of district in a day school, and that would be an average of $35,000 per student for each of those 4 students. We have had success this year of transitioning kids back to the high school. 4 students have already transitioned back this year to Wareham High School. Thank you. And are doing very well over at the high school. Our 2 tuition students, currently our tuition cost is $28,386, so we have $56,772 in tuition, and we have saved by not sending those 4 students that came in from the foster care system $140,000, and then those other 10 students that would have had to go out from either the middle school or the high school would be another $350,000 that we would have been paying out, plus transportation. I'm not sure what the transportation cost would be, but that's not including the transportation.
So because West Wareham Academy is recognized by the state as a public day school, and because the school committee voted to exclude West Wareham as a choice school, we charge tuition for some of the local school districts who are trying to find a placement like this. We tuition those students in at a little under $29,000. So part of the program is this revenue stream that we've been able to create with some of our tuition, quotes, tuition in kids from other districts.
Which brings us to our account numbers. There were 8 accounts that didn't increase or decrease. They stayed the same. We had 3 accounts that actually decreased, and we had 8 accounts that increased. And I'll go over the increases.
And just a question.
Sure.
So all of the salary for West Wareham and the cooperative school, or especially West Wareham, all the salary line items is in a different, was it there?
It's, if you look on page
Sorry about that.
16 of 18, you'll find
I
West
just didn't
Wareham
see it.
Academy, and you should see.
Right, it wasn't on, isn't on the PowerPoint.
But Rhonda, some of the, we have 2 positions that are paid for through that revolving account for those tuitions that I just mentioned.
Okay, great.
So we do offset it with those, with the revolver.
So the 8 increases were, the first one was in the contracted therapeutic service, which was the behavior interventionist from Walker. There was an increase of $1,723, and that was the anticipated increase from the vendor, Walker's price. The textbook account last year was wiped out, so this year we've increased it by $1,500, looking to purchase textbooks and materials that align with the new Common Core and that align with the high school and middle school scope and sequences. The contracted psychologist is the Walker Partnership. We have a contract with Dr. Livingston. He actually also works for the Department of Children and Family, and he's a psychiatrist who comes out and consults with myself, students, and families. Our contracted social work service increased due to the adjustment from the Walker. It's a Walker partnership of $2,628. Our computer maintenance account increased for $700 to purchase and install 11 of the 30 wireless access points that they're doing throughout the, the district, along with a network server account increase of $500 to replace the 6 of 12 switches and install 8 of 30 wireless access points. The copier and lease account went up by $540. That reflects the cost of the maintenance contracts, and the equipment contracted services increased of $617, again, based on the vendor.
Wareham Middle School, please be silent for afternoon announcements. Did you know that the holiday season is one of the most wasteful times of the year? Did you know that the 2.6 billion holiday cards sent each season to school football feel 10 stories high? Please help the Green Team put some of these cards back to use by bringing your family's cards into the hall and depositing them in the marked boxes in the hallway. We appreciate your efforts. The Green Team will meet after school today in Mr. Johnson's room, D124. Downtown Club will meet
Student
after school
capacity.
today in the
Why weren't there any
About
Walker costs
Club will
for
meet on the first and third Thursdays of the month.
FY12? Why weren't there any Walker costs on that line item?
Intramural
For
basketball
FY12?
for all middle school girls is today after
That
school
and some
exam.
pre-buy.
Right, it was something with the pre-buy, right, from last year?
Student council will meet today in Mr. Jolly's room after school. Students who cannot attend must let Mrs. Lasorsa or Mrs. Jolly know before the meeting. At this time, grade 6 students may be dismissed. Ms. Dahmer to the main office, please. Ms. Dahmer to the main office. Grade 7 may now be dismissed.
The good news is that we didn't have to listen to these all throughout the day.
Dismissed grade 8 students. Thank you all and have a nice day.
When are we dismissed?
Don't even think about it. Any other questions from Miss Miranda about West Wareham Academy? Tom?
What is this Walker thing? I don't know.
So, Walker is actually a foundation that does a variety of services. They really, when I talk about out-of-district kids, bringing kids back, they were actually one of our competitors. They're one of the organizations that people say, gee, send them to Walker, it's a wonderful place to be, the Walker School in Newton. And that would be about a $60,000 placement. Part of Walker's format is to also provide services within districts. Rather than kids going out to private programs, they provide a portion of the services in district. So there is a social worker, a therapeutic behavior interventionist, and a psychiatrist that comes once about every 4 to 6 weeks to work with our staff. So they provide the therapeutic side of the program, we provide the educational side. So rather than sending kids out and paying the larger price and transporting them and so forth, we brought them in. And so therefore it's called the Walker Partnership. They provide the therapeutic piece, we provide the educational piece.
And there is an expense?
Absolutely, there's an expense, yes. The expense, however, is overridden in a couple of ways. One, clearly transportation. One also being that it's cheaper for us to provide the service in-house than it is to pay for those programs. And as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the Walker program at the Deacon School, we also have control over who we hire, whether the people we want to have there and so forth. So we evaluate them through our evaluation system rather than kids going off and it being very, very difficult for them to come back.
It would cost us no matter what, it just
Right.
costs us less.
Is it, is there a Walker expense that shows on this?
It's under contracted.
Contracted.
Yeah. Contracted service. So you'll see.
Right, actually, right on the street.
Not 60,000.
It's actually in several different lines.
Oh, really?
Okay. I don't need to be, as long as it's here.
Yep.
The other part of it was the out-of-district students pay $29,000, yet the 16 and $500,000 is a cost of $40,000 a student. So they're not quite self-liquidating, or what's the deal?
At today's ratio, I have to take the average for the year, which is a higher number than that. And the charges, what I've simply done is taken a figure that is the average daily membership for the program and divided that to come up with the tuition. So for the current year, it's a hair under 29,000. Next year it will be based on what this salary is. So I'll take a figure like, let's say 16 or 18 students, divide that amount and establish the rate based on that amount.
Thank you.
But if we sent our children,
It would be 60, yeah.
well, it would be 40 anyway.
Yeah.
Plus transportation.
Plus transportation. Any other questions about West Wareham Academy? Because Mr. Luzon will be coming to the table and be able to answer all of your special ed, student services, questions. Thank you very much,
you.
Ms. Miranda.
Thank you, Wendy.
We're on page 42 of 57. No, 60. More than that. I don't know, 66. 42. Yeah, we're on 42 of 68. You know what they say? We save the best for last. So
Not last.
between between Bob and Jan, we have just as people may get themselves a cookie for some blood sugar or coffee. Now with student services and then with curriculum, these are two directors that have direct influence over the entire system. So special needs is in all areas of the school system. It isn't, so it's not just what you see if you went into the Everett Center and saw two secretaries and a director. You know, it's a K to 12 in all 9 buildings. So, you want to know what page? So I believe 12.
We're really spread throughout
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But-
So I do have a slide that adds those up, the ones that are in the
Perfect.
buildings.
But I think, if we looked at found 12, we have these system accounts, which are on page 9 of 18. And within that, you'll find some of this,
That's good.
but not all of it.
Truth is, we really don't want to ever add it all up because it's too frightening.
I can give you a ballpark and tell you that it's a little-
25%, I think?
Just about 25% of the
Overall budget.
school district budget. Which is probably not a good place for me to start, but I might as well start with, with the truth.
You'll be happy to know, Bob, I don't call you a bean counter. I call you the blank check.
However, you'll be happy to know, I think, that we have been able to manage the costs, even though they are very, very high costs. And we also, I had mentioned earlier that we are able to educate just about 99% of the student population in-house. That excludes those folks that choose to go out to the vocational school and so forth. But in terms of special education needs, we are able to, and it is an important number, we're able to educate 99% of the students here in district.
You know, I think a lot is made of the financial cost cost avoidance of bringing students back to the district or keeping them here. Not enough probably is made of the fact that this is a superior method for the child themselves. I mean, the parents, I'm sure, love the fact that they're not going miles and miles away every day. Do you have a comfort level that they're getting at least as good, if not better, education?
Oh, there's no question in my mind that they're getting a better education.
I know you're a little biased on that.
Well,
but
I
is-
certainly am biased, but I'll give you the reasons why I'm biased. I think that that one of the biggest reasons is that, you know, students, I think Donna had mentioned it earlier in terms of the mental health issues and our role in that. But the truth is that for a variety of reasons, you can anticipate that at least 20% or more of students, whether you're talking about educational services, mental health services, just domestic things that happen, that there are at least 20% of the population that need some additional supports beyond what the traditional day is. And those are really the students that we're supporting through student services. One of the reasons why it's so important is that I had mentioned earlier that student who runs into some trouble in 8th or 9th grade, and then they are ready to come back and they want to come back, and they've sort of gotten their act together in terms of the difficulties they were having or the special education needs that they were having are resolved or they're resolving. To get them back can be tough. And one of the reasons it can be tough is that the curriculum at the schools, if somebody is at Walker School in Newton, there's no guarantee that curriculum is tied to the curriculum in Wareham. However, if they're at West, and we should have mentioned this with Wendy here, if they're at West, for example, the curriculum at West is the same curriculum that's taught here. The same methods, the same textbooks, the same everything. So it makes it much easier for them to be able to come back in and end up with a Wareham diploma and be successful. So that's probably one of the biggest reasons for that. So let me talk a little bit about student services, and Stacy is staying beyond the West presentation because Stacy's role here I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but just to give you an idea of what encompasses Office of Student Services, clearly the big one is special education in terms of the amount of money and the amount of students involved. But we also manage the Title I, the response to intervention that you've heard so much about, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. A new phrase that you'll hear come up is PBIS, which stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. It's something that we're looking at now. But these are school-wide behavioral support systems that all of the principals have wanted to get involved with, particularly K-8, kindergarten through 8th grade. And we're at the beginnings of beginning school-wide behavioral support programs in the district. The preschool, you've already heard from Mary Morgan. Beyond School Time is a new concept this year, not new money necessarily, but a new concept in terms of how we handle some of the supplemental supports, the things that happen academically and non-academically beyond the hours of school. So Maureen Manning, Jane Fondulis are two people who most of you know. You have heard words like Title I and supplemental educational supports and 21st century programs, and we took all of those programs with some additional grant monies and we put them together in after school, and we tied that to parent involvement, which is something that we have really needed to continue to work on in terms of family engagement. All of that is out of a new office called the Office of Beyond School Time. And almost all of, and I will say about 90% of the funding for those programs are all grant funds. So you're not going to see a lot of that in this budget because very little of it is LEA funded. But it is very much a big part of what we're doing after school hours. Technology for the last 2 months, I believe, has been managed through my office at this point. So I'm the central office administrator for technology over the past couple of months. I've already heard from Jeff about the transportation side of homeless services, but there's lots of other pieces to homeless services that are involved, and that comes out of student services as well. And then finally, nursing for the district and kindergarten to 8th grade guidance is all managed through the Office of Student Services. So an organizational chart, because we're in so many different places, is tough to give you the traditional breakdown. So therefore you have this sort of bubble chart. But to talk about the students who are in specialized programs within the district and those students who are placed out of district currently is the top bubble under Stacy's title of Supervisor of Special Education. So at this current time, we have 31 students who are placed out of the district in specialized programs. That's collaborative and private programs. We also have the program supervision for our 2 special ed buildings, which is East for the preschool and West for West Wareham Academy. There are 17 substantially separate programs within the district for pre-K through grade 12. Substantially separate means that we have the capacity that a student can spend essentially all of their time in those programs, and they can certainly receive all of their academic instruction in the programs. They probably don't, or very few of them actually get all of their services there, but we have the capacity to do that because they're kids who periodically or frequently need to have their full day in what we call a substantially separate program. And then there is extended school year under the special education law. Excuse me, there is a need to provide extended school year services for certain kids who show substantial regression when there's an absence of services because of school vacations. And we've already talked about the Walker Partnership programs. So much of that is what Stacy works on. The other thing that I would like to mention to you is in terms of the number of staff, I haven't included that here, but in special education we have 52 teachers, 40 and a half paraprofessionals. There are 5 team chair people across the district now I'm talking, and 5 and a half building level clerical staff. So that's sort of the staff in addition to what you see in these various bubbles. There are 6 school nurses, 4 guidance or adjustment counselors, 5 school psychologists, 12 related services staff. So if that's a new term to you, that means speech pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists. So the next 3 slides are really, the next 2 slides talk about district level accounts. So this slide and the next slide are really accounts that are for the whole district and the changes that I have there. And you can see that the one that has a substantial change is contracted services. I will talk to you in just a few minutes about exactly what's involved in contracted services, but this is not an increase in staffing that we've done. This is the result of the grants, particularly the IDEA grant, which is the federal entitlement grant for special education, has not kept up with the costs that are there for increases in salaries and so forth. So that $15,000 increase is for that reason. We have, just to give you an idea of the students who do go to out-of-district programs, we actually have, Stacy help me out, 8 or 9 at Schwartz. So 8 or 9 students who go to a program in Dartmouth, and several of those children have such significant medical needs that they have to have a nurse on the transport with them. So we have a licensed practical nurse, an LPN, who meets the bus in the morning at the barn, goes in with the kids, and goes back with them because of their medical needs. So you see that there is an out-of-district medical contracted services line, and there is a slight increase in that line.
What is the risk associated with their disease? I mean, what is that nurse going to prevent happening?
It's either to prevent because of, let's say, a seizure disorder or a medical disorder that they need specialized medications if there's a medical event that occurs on the transport.
Wow. And the licensed practical nurse is trained to intervene?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
However, just to clarify though, like we would with all of our other runs, our first move would be to call medical services, but in the interim, we need to have somebody there because of the severity of their medical need. These are also district-level accounts. The changes, really all of the increases that you see here are the result of a change in the law around both teacher certification related to students who have English as a second language, and also the curriculum for those students. There is a requirement, and we're in the 3rd cohort of sort of a rollout of a new piece of regulation that will require that teachers who teach children whose language is other than English, their primary language is other than English, those teachers will have to have specialized endorsements to their certification, and any administrator who evaluates those teachers will have to have a specialized endorsement to their administrative license. So there's quite a bit of training, quite a bit of, there are some changes around testing requirements for those students. And so those amounts, those increases of $2,500, $1,000, and so forth, is really specifically related to those changes in the law. The next two slides, this one and the next one, because special ed accounts, if you look at the fourth set of numbers on the account numbers over, any account that has an O2 in that fourth position is a special ed account. Special ed supplies, materials, and so forth, staff are spread out throughout the buildings. So you'll find some in Deaconess, you'll find some in Minot, and so forth. What I've done with these slides is I've actually taken by an account number. So let's say regular, well, I'm going to say special ed instructional materials. This is a cumulative cost for those materials across the district. So you can have an idea of, well, how much are we really increasing the costs for instructional supplies, special education instructional supplies as an example. So you won't find those accounts here because it really is an accumulation of the ones that are under that number for all of the different schools. So as I take them and I put them all together and I look at each of those accounts, every school has an account with that title to it or a similar named title. These are the cumulative increases for those or decreases for those particular lines. The biggest change that you'll see in this group are supplies and materials, and that simply is because those lines in FY13 were zeroed out along with many of the other materials lines that were zeroed out because of the reasons that you already know. So we were trying to bring those lines back to the amount that they were the prior year. We had no materials or supply monies in those lines for the current year. So that's why that $19,863 is there. And the same with the supplies and computer materials and supplies of increase of $3,425 because those lines were also reduced in 13. And then the second set of accounts in that area, the substantial decreases in building maintenance, we're really looking at East and West. The only building maintenance accounts we have in special education are the accounts for East and West. We pay heat, utilities, and so forth through the special ed accounts because they are just for the use in special ed programming. So we do have building maintenance accounts. Those were reduced by $4,500. That's based on Anna's calculations of how much we've spent for those accounts in past years. And then some slight increases for guidance and school psychology supplies, and that really is entirely to purchase updated test materials. Tests, for example, for intelligence testing, the Wechsler intelligence scales, every 4 or 5 years gets revised. We can no longer use the old revisions, so we, over 2 or 3 years, will purchase additional kits, so our school psychologists have the kits that are supposed to be used for intelligence testing as one example. Network server, I'll talk about that later. You've heard network servers and so forth through all the different accounts. I'm the one that's responsible for that, so I gave you a separate slide to explain all of that. So through all of the special ed accounts, this is really the page that shows the increases, the substantial increases or decreases in the various lines. And I really think that it was ironic and not on purpose that the biggest number is missing there under collaborative schools, so I apologize for that. I really didn't leave it out on purpose. I think I just twitched. But the increase for collaborative schools is $588,477.
The increase?
So the number that is in that line should be 588,477. Currently blank.
That's multiple collaboratives?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, 588.
588,477.
Thank you.
That's the budget item or the increase?
That's the increase.
The increase.
That's the increase. Please notice, though, Dr. Sylvia, that the one above that decreases by $260,657 for a net change. Okay. Okay,
But those are moving targets. Those are guesstimates.
those are guesstimates, yes.
Did you get
So-
a sticky note on your desk today?
Did I get, no,
message
not this
note on
year,
your desk
no.
today?
But Stacy's gonna talk about this because our next slide actually is about out-of-district costs. You need to think about, first of all, I want you to think about two lines, those two lines that we just talked about, the last two lines on the prior page. The 9,300 and the 9,400 accounts. One of them is for private schools, one of them is for collaborative schools. Both of those are out-of-district programs. So you have to look at those combined, number one. And number two, you have to look at that figure less the amount that we've received for circuit breaker from the prior year. So what this chart shows you, and I wish I had a pointer to show you, but this is looking at the real cost, not with any set-asides, not with any circuit breaker calculated in, the real cost since FY10, the 09-10 school year. These are the total costs and the changes in those costs. So you can see from FY10, FY11, FY12, and and FY13, our costs were 1.9, almost 2 million, up to a high of 2.1 million in FY12, and then back down in FY13. Please also keep in mind that those are not necessarily the same children. Some children were new to us, and some children came back to us, for example, to West Wareham Academy or to one of our schools. So the net cost that Stacy has managed to maintain has been around that $2 million figure. And that includes typically anywhere from a 5 to a 7% increase that we have to calculate for those private school programs that we've placed children at. We have no control over that. The state establishes the rate for those programs. They let us know how much those programs are going to charge for the next year. So we have to calculate those in. So as I sat and worked on this budget in October, November, I'm looking at what programs might be charging in March and April and May of 2014. So, you just keep that in mind. The difference
And
this year,
first
which...
question.
Mhm.
And on average, what percentage have those increases gone up year after year?
Anywhere from 3 to 7 or 8% on average. However, we'd mentioned it happens to be, I'm not going to pick on Schwartz if there are any folks out there that are listening from Schwartz, but Schwartz went through a contract adjustment because of a building project, and they were awarded, or they're seeking actually, and probably will be awarded an increase that will be in the range of 10%, about $5,000 for the following year. And we have 8 or 9 students there currently.
Oh, I see. So if you build a larger school, you get paid more money.
How about that?
We ought to do that.
Right.
The state is so lovely. Aren't they to do that for them?
So just so we had, and I'm going to ask Stacy to talk about this a little bit. We had, we didn't get a slip on my desk the day before that we presented this, but since school came back into session and a little bit before that in the late summer, we had several children move into town who were already placed in private placements. The increase as a result of those move-ins was $279,896. So you can see on that last column, there's a light blue area at the top. That's the amount of the cost, the cumulative cost of those placements. Can you add to that?
Yeah.
Just generally speaking, can I ask a question on that? Generally speaking?
Yeah.
Okay. When that happens, I guess I'm still confused, and I'm sure other people are too. When that happens, when we get 1 or 2, 3 move-ins with a healthy price tag, where does this money come from to pay the bill?
So the technical answer, do you want to go ahead?
I can take a stab at it. The technical answer is that when students move in, we had 4 students move in between September and, let's say, December. We're not required to pay that price tag for this school year because of the move-in law.
Okay, all right, because that's different now. It used to be that we did pay the freight.
Correct.
Okay, so that gives us a time to budget for the next year.
Exactly.
Gotcha, thank you. Because it never used to be, that's a change.
Yes,
Yeah.
within the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's changed it's changed quite a bit actually.
Yeah.
So if a student moves in after April 1st, we're not required to pay that tuition rate until the following fiscal year.
Correct, but if they move in, all right, let's just, for argument's sake, let's say they move in November, and they got a $60,000 price tag. Who pays the bill?
It depends.
All right, so there is a gray area then.
There is a lot of gray, depending upon how the IEP is written. So if it was a collaborative IEP, we would be required to pay for it immediately, because a collaborative placement is considered a public day school. If it's a private school IEP, we wouldn't have to pay until the start of the next fiscal year.
So if they go to Cape Cod
July 1.
Collaborative, we get the bill in November.
We own it immediately. yeah.
Okay. So then I ask my question again, where did this money come from if you've got a $60,000 bill that you hadn't budgeted in November?
We try as best we can to sort of predict, looking at trends over the last couple of years, how many students are going to potentially move in. I mean, Jeff keeps referring to us as the blank check because we really don't know, but just based on professional judgment and experience over the last couple of years, we know that Wareham typically has a very fluid population, and so we can sort of say, you know, with a general, a general degree of certainty that we're going to get 3 or 4 movements per year, and make our best.
Well, I want to make a point to that, but I'll wait until the end of your
So
presentation.
just to give you an example of the volatility of this, I want to give you a couple of figures without naming schools or obviously students. But the lowest out-of-district tuition that we will be paying this current year is $33,400. I'm not talking about transportation, which can be as high as $15,000 or $20,000. But the lowest tuition that we're paying this year is $33,400. The highest tuition that we'll be paying for one student is $262,528. Just a second set of figures. If I take the 3 lowest tuitions that we're paying, the 3 lowest tuitions that we're paying currently, 3 students, $100,200, 3 tuitions. The 3 highest tuitions combined is $611,952 for 3 students. So again, we use natural gas here, but I used to say this up in New Hampshire, short of fuel oil costs 6 years ago, it's one of the most volatile lines, I think the most volatile line in anticipating our costs. As you can see, and I really credit Stacy for this entirely, is that our costs have been stable, and part of the reason that our costs have been stable up until this coming fiscal year is that we have been able to do a good job bringing kids back into the district and also avoiding kids going out of the district. So I mentioned earlier that 99% of our students, our student population, are able to be educated in district. That's a very important thing to me as the bean counter.
Could you talk a little bit about circuit breaker, because these gentlemen may not be all that familiar with it, and the volatility of that reimbursement?
Great. So circuit breaker is the state's way of saying, well, we didn't give you all of the costs to pay for special education as we said that we would back in 1997, I think it was, 94 actually. But circuit breaker is an effort to try to offset the unanticipated costs that a school district will experience. And the way they do that is that they take an average per pupil cost for across the state, and there's a formula that is, I believe, now we're up to just a hair under $40,000. So they say, okay, you own the first $40,000 of costs for that student.
Which is 4 times that average, correct?
Yep. And anything above that cost, we're going to reimburse a percentage of cost beyond that figure. I'll say $40,000. So if you remember that wonderful phrase, ARA, from a few years ago, and they said, hey, you could have all of this extra money. The good news was that there was that money there that helped us out. The bad news was they said, but we're going to decrease from the 72% above that number, above that 40,000 that we're going to reimburse you, and now we're going to make that 72% drop to 40%. So it came into this hand, it left this hand.
Twice as much left.
So that number has hovered anywhere from 40% up to 72%. It never reached beyond 72%. This year's circuit breaker was anticipated at 70%, but then when 9C cuts were a potential, they said, well, we don't know what your circuit breaker reimbursement is. This district wisely has used our funds a year in delay, I'll say, in that we're going to use the monies that are coming in this year for next year because of this very reason. All of a sudden it went from 72% to 40%, and I'd be coming to you saying somewhere in the ballpark of $300,000 I need to find because the circuit breaker didn't do what they said they were going to do. So we're projected at 70% this year. You'll see a graph that will show that offset. And so my bad news to you is that we do have this total of a $327,820 increase. When I look at the 9,300 and the 9,400 account, the two out-of-district accounts together, 279,000 of that, almost 280,000 of it, are from those students that we mentioned that are move-ins, and just a hair under 48,000 of it are anticipated program cost increases because the state allows those private schools to have a cost increase. Thank you.
Just to be clear, going back to the move-in law, that first year, it doesn't forgive the first year, it only delays it until the next year. You actually have to budget double the prior year and this year. No, so if a student moves in from Falmouth, Falmouth is required to pay that bill for the rest of that school year. Okay, all right, so it does forgive the first year, unless they move in November. Right. Okay, thanks.
After April, is that right, Stacy?
Yes, April 1st.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to go on to next slide is really just looking at broad allocations by percentage. And the largest percent, obviously, you see in the red, 64% is for special education in-district costs. The 3% blue, I guess, I'm not going to guess at what kind of blue that is. The darker blue is administrative and clerical cost. The greenish, sort of yucky green color, is our out-of-district costs, or 22% of the total special ed budget. 5%, which is, I believe, the purple, are student services other than special education. So those are those things like homeless services, like some of the costs for response to intervention that I'm paying for through our budget.
Would 504s come under that category?
Yes. Yes. And then finally, 6%, even though it's non-net, just to give you an idea that of all money spent for special education services, including transportation, approximately 6% of that would be for transportation.
And that money goes literally from one hand to the other, correct?
Yes.
What I mean by that is literally transportation bills student services, and that's how they get the money.
Correct. Next chart shows special education costs by building, so I thought you might be interested in looking at just building to building, what percentage of what we pay in our in-district costs go to each of the buildings. So, again, I'm horrible with colors, but the darker blue on the upper right-hand corner, 20% is the high school. Going clockwise, 21% is the middle school, 9% is West Wareham Academy, 17% is Deaconess, 17% is also Minot. And 16% is East. So of the funds spent in district.
Nothing for the cooperative?
Nothing.
Is that in the high school?
Did I leave that? No, high school's 20%. Oh, I see.
The cooperative.
We've included the cooperative. The only charges for the cooperative at this time are the tutoring services that are part of what Kathy talked about, PM1. So I've included that as an all-district cost, because we also provide tutoring for kids from the high school, the middle school, and actually the elementary schools who have required tutoring either because they've got some issue at school that they can't come back to school, or they have a medical need that they need tutoring outside of school.
Thanks.
The real surprise on that graph to me is East.
Because of the percent?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how easy, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, how easy is it for a parent to come and, so to speak, prove that they should be getting this service free, which I suspect every parent would love to get that service free? I mean, that's a big number.
It is a big number, and the challenge for us, and Stacy helped me out with this, but I think one of the challenges for us is that the early intervention system, so kids come out of early intervention into the school system at age 3 or age 2 years, 9 months really, and their system, their requirements for eligibility are different than they are for special education. So we'll have people who have gotten services since their child was, say, 18 months of age, and they're used to a certain level of service, even people coming in their house and working within the house. And so they come to us, and their expectation is, well, these things are just going to continue the way they are. But our regulations are entirely different. So, yes, absolutely, it's a real challenge to be able to have them make that shift. Having model students in our preschool program makes that easier, simply because we can have them still in the program, but not as children with special needs.
Wow.
But it is definitely tough.
That's just a big number.
And I think it's difficult to tease out sometimes when these students are coming into us at 2.9 years of age, to tease out exactly what is an educational disability versus a student who might have, moved or have, just lack of exposure. So to err on the side of caution and to give them sort of those early intervention services sort of within our preschool program.
Yeah, I mean, it could be just socialization.
It could be.
Right.
It could be.
I mentioned contracted services as another area that had about a $15,000 increase. The chart that I'm showing you is really the one on the left are the different positions that are being paid for through the IDEA, or the Federal Entitlement Grant for Special Education, and the right side are the costs for the services that we're paying for out of the LEA. So I have two contracted services lines. One of them is in the federal grant, one of them is in our LEA budget. The IDEA grant has, if it's gone up at all, it's gone up by very small percentages, very, very small percentages, and it simply hasn't kept up with, for example, if we pay for a speech pathologist through the IDEA grant, and we actually have just a hair under 15 positions that we pay for through the grant, the IDEA grant. If that doesn't keep up with that cost, I've got to move some amounts of money over, and that's why I had to move that $15,000 over to the LEA budget from IDEA.
Would this be the right time to ask you, and I'm just talking big numbers, not trivial numbers. Can you think of a program that used to be fully funded by grants and now is substantially or 100% funded by the LEA?
Not a specific program, Jeff, so much as positions. So right now, I'm just a hair under 15 positions. I believe when I came here 5 years ago, we were up in the area of 20 positions, maybe 19 positions that we're actually paying for through the grant, that the grant simply hasn't kept up with.
So you were paying for 19.
Yes.
Now the grants are supporting 15.
Correct.
But those 4 positions still exist.
Correct. So we move them over.
4 full-time professional
Yes.
positions.
Professional
So
or
that's-
paraprofessional, yeah.
Well, that's
It's IEP driven.
Still sounds like a couple $100,000 by the time you add everything in.
I would say so, yeah.
And in your case, maybe different with Jan, I'm prepping her for my question. In your case, you don't really have any choice.
Right.
Correct? These are services that, as Cliff says, the IEP is requiring that you provide. So you've just absorbed 200 grand
Yep.
into your LEA budget.
Correct. And
Thank you.
And I'll show you that 2 slides from now. It'll be a little bit more visually obvious. We talked about circuit breakers. Circuit breaker. I'm giving you a 8-year view of what the circuit breaker funding has looked like since FY06, and that's not good news in that they're giving us more money. The what it really reflects is the changes in the amount of students who we have in that category where they have substantial cost over $40,000, that magic figure that I was talking about. So when I said that we have one student, for example, that's $262,000, we pay the first $40,000, and then we'll get a percentage of the remaining $220,000 for that student. Now, if they reimburse at 40%, obviously 40% of 220 is quite a bit less than 72% of the 220.
So if we put a line next door to that line in FY13 and called it LEA, it would go right through the chart. It would go clear through the paper. Because if we're getting circuit breaker to the point that that chart shows, you know, our local expense is 3-4 times that much.
That's right. That's right. Right. This is a very quick chart, and I know that there are many different colors on the chart, but I had said to Jeff that this will make it a little bit clearer. If you look at FY6, this is
You say so.
these are all of the grants minutes to the Student Services Office sort of piled up over the past 6 years. Now you see that it's higher the last 2 years. The reason it's higher is simply the Title I is there now, and it wasn't prior to the past 2 years. But if you look at the kind of yucky green color, the bigger piece of those towards the bottom of each of the bars, that is the IDEA amount over the last 8 years. Well, you can see that amount has not changed, in fact has gone down a little bit each year. It simply has not gone up. If you think of a teacher's salary, for example, over an 8-year period, and what that might go up with step and lane increases and so forth, and bargain agreements, it simply isn't going to pay for it. So when you have 15 or 20 people being paid out of the same grant, and it goes either up 1% or down 1%, and you have average costs of maybe 3 or 4 or 5% a year over 8 years, you can see that simply the grants are not keeping up with the other costs. You'll also see, compared FY11 to FY12, I'm sorry, 12 to 13, that the purple towards the top of the chart actually gets smaller. That's because Title I, that's the Title I amount, and that amount has decreased by about $130,000 this current year. So we've taken some hits in our grants. I also wanted to just...
Be prepared for more. Be prepared for more cuts.
Right. Just on the revenue side, I'm showing you here beyond the grants of the Medicaid funds, and as you can see, these are the amounts that have been that the town has received as a result of the Medicaid, school-based Medicaid claiming that we get reimbursement for. There was a substantial change in the law in 2009 that affected 10, 11, and 12, where it became much tighter. We became a fee-for-service type of a system. The state did, that is, not just us. So that every single service that's provided, if a speech pathologist sees somebody for a half hour, we literally bill for that half hour and get reimbursed for those amounts. So that's what Medicaid has looked like.
But that doesn't come directly to the school department.
No, that goes to the town.
Generally, yeah. Well, I guess it does indirectly, but
Yes.
not directly.
Is it a positive on the in-kind calculation?
It is factored into the in-kind.
It's in the in-kind. If
Yeah.
it's a positive, I don't know whether your costs are higher than what we get back to Medicaid, if that's what you're asking.
But it's part of the in-kind
It
calculation.
is part of the in-kind.
And now that I have you totally taken by figures, I'll give you my last one. And this is just a summary of the technology accounts. You've heard several of the principals talk about increases in the data services. You heard the phrase Comcast Business Class Service. You've heard about switches and wireless connectivity and so forth. And really what I'm looking for, and it is spread across the district in the various building level accounts, is our primarily two things that we've needed as, quotes, a backbone of the system that has been lacking. One of them is connectivity, speed, and bandwidth. Barry had mentioned earlier that we have used sort of residential complementary modems in the schools, And we have worked with Comcast, and we're actually this week putting in our E-rate, which is the federal adjustment that's given to schools and libraries for certain services. We will be able to get the Comcast business class service for about $5,000, a little under $5,000 for the whole district to advance our connectivity up to the point of business class service. The middle school, the high school will have the faster service, and the smaller schools will have about 5 or 6 times more than what they have right now, but they're a little bit less. In order to do some of these changes, and the second one, I'm sorry, is the wireless connectivity. So we've looked at a variety of wireless options.
I'm sorry, the first thing you mentioned was the pipe into the building.
Correct.
Got it.
Yes, thank you, the pipe into the building. The second is that as you talk about the various systems that we're using, the number of iPads, somebody asked a question earlier about iPads that are totally wireless dependent. We have needed to have much more than the little spots that we have in the buildings of wireless connectivity. So we put together a plan, a 3-phase plan to be able to establish connectivity, wireless connectivity, for at least up to half of the schools through this next fiscal year, the year that we're talking about right now. And we have begun that process. We finished phase 1 over this past school break. So we have in the 4 larger buildings, we already have a total of 21 access points that were installed and are operational now. And we have a second and a third phase. Part of this additional cost that you see here is to help pay for that additional phase.
And by the way, Mr. Luzon, last Wednesday during school vacation, participated in pulling the wires for the wireless with other volunteers.
With other volunteers.
That we got to help do that process.
Yeah. In the science department at the high school is got a strong competition going with the English department, I think, or something like that. I'm not sure which department it is, but
A wire pulling contest?
well, there were about 5 of them. They're pulling wire.
Exactly. I didn't call him a bean count.
I guess I have to ask my question now. I don't want to apologize to everyone. I do have to leave at 3:15, so I don't want anyone to think I'm rude, but I do have a doctor's appointment. So I want to get this question in before I have to leave, and I apologize to Jan. I'm sure she'll have a wonderful presentation.
You make me nervous when you could ask a question and then leave, Dr.
No,
Sylvia.
I want to get back to my original point. I didn't want to make it because I didn't want to prolong the, I wanted you to finish your presentation. But I'm going to be a little hypothetical here, because I need to know what we would do in an absolute extreme emergency situation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's assume for a minute that we get a bunch of kids that come in November, or we find out after the fact that the circuit breaker's been reduced, whatever the reason is. But we're put to a situation where we absolutely, positively do not have the money to meet these obligations, these special ed obligations. What do we do?
Well, I'm happy to tell you, obviously, in 5 years, I haven't had to do that. The school committee has watched me in the back of the
No, I
auditorium
understand that,
happily
but you know
without
there
having
is
to
a
say to
strong
you-
possibility that that could happen.
But
I
it's-
want to
yes.
know
So
what the
it's-
remedy is. What would we do?
So part of my answer, and I'm going to guess that I'm on line with the superintendent, because we usually are in sync, is that the first thing that we would do is look at our other lines and see where we would be able to take from to keep our budget balanced.
I'm assuming that we've done everything.
Okay.
And we've
But that
we've hit a wall.
But my honest answer to you is that would be our first step, I think, and then I think our second step would be to come back to the committee and let them know that we have this shortfall.
Well, I'm not going to donate the money.
But I can tell you, you can read the paper practically any spring day and find some town where a school committee has had to face that question from a special ed director, and I talked to those special ed directors.
Okay, then what is the remedy for the school committee?
Going to town meeting.
One of the things.
That's the hat.
Finding it
To the school
somewhere,
committee, yeah.
going to town meeting.
Right, it may be town meeting, it may be a freeze in the budget, I mean, it could be any of those possibilities.
Finding
And I'm
that
not trying to
special
avoid your
staff
question, Dr.
somewhere.
Sylvia. We work very hard. If you can imagine, when we sit down and we do the budget, we're sitting there in October of 2012, anticipating who might move into town, for example,
No, you
in
can't.
2014.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying is, in my mind, and I know that I'm getting a little long in the tooth here, but in my mind, when you get a situation like this, and you've got budget allocations, our biggest budget allocation is salaries, all right? You've got contract commitments to our staff, okay? It's well into the year, and we get an unusual circumstance of $200,000 or $300,000. That's an extraordinary circumstance. To me, that's like the roof falling in at Minor Forest.
Absolutely.
So there has to be some remedy, or there has to be a procedure in which the school committee can proceed. What would it be? And I'm not trying to prolong the meeting, but I think it's an important thing to say, because at some point in time, we're gonna hit the wall.
I think we've hit the wall, and I think the situation, the best way that I see it progressing, and I look around this table, and I see Derek here, and I see FinCom people, more FinCom people, and I see a selectman here, and I think if everyone is on the same page, I mean, no one in town is gonna say that anything is more important than children. But when you've got pieces of government, them against us, like we've had in the past, it doesn't work. And I think you guys are really on the right track of getting the more, like having people like Derek here,
No,
and Alan.
I understand all that,
And that
and I
we're going
appreciate
to
it.
have to go to town meeting because we're going to have to go to town meeting.
And I guess that's what I'm saying, is there is gonna reach a point in time where we're gonna have a situation that's gonna be like this. And the point that I'm trying to make is there has to be some kind of a remedy, whether it be town meeting, or I don't know what it would be. But the point is,
Education.
these are things that we have no control over.
And we're just finding these things out.
And
You
that's
guys
the,
know
that's the
that.
scary part. So I don't want to prolong the meeting, but I just wanted to know what would be the remedy if we really couldn't go to our own budget. You know, if we're just to the bone. So, anyway, thank you.
There is no magic state fairy
That-
that comes
that's where I'm
down
coming
and
from.
No.
says it. So
Right. No.
it's the same thing if the roof falls in, if the bus
Could we go to
breaks
the,
down.
could we go to the state? Is there an emergency thing that we could apply to the state for?
Not to my,
There actually
well,
is, but there's a formula, in which case you would have to plug in all the numbers. You may qualify for it, you may not.
Okay.
And it's a ratio, but depending on where your budget has been and what you've
I didn't mean to
incurred
put you
for
guys on the
costs.
spot, but it's important to me, and I think it's important for everybody to understand that, we're playing with unforeseen circumstances here. We have no way of predicting where this is gonna go. So, thank you very much for your patience,
There
and
is-
everyone else's patience.
There is an answer. There's a couple elements to, because it's really, in a sense, not hypothetical. It's real, across the Commonwealth. Two things. You may remember that what Bob said about how he handles circuit breaker money. He doesn't use circuit breaker money in the year in which it's received.
Right.
Which is very prudent.
It's very
and
smart.
It's part of the reason we haven't hit a wall, because he's had this money, okay? The second issue is that, in fact, it has happened for the last decade, and the truth is, there is a second element, which Derek knows all too well, and that is health insurance, okay? The combination of special ed and health insurance has reduced the amount that is being spent primarily on regular education staff, period. That's what's being done to cope with what you're talking about. Now, the actual emergency, no, but in general, that's what's happening.
And again, I apologize, but I think it was an important enough issue to just talk about and have a little discussion about, and to put my mind at rest, because it does bother me.
Because the formulas that created Chapter 70 did not anticipate the growth of special ed, and did not anticipate the growth of health insurance. And those two factors are driving out regular education.
Right.
That's a fact.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I missed it, I know you said it, but what's your head count, your FTEs on, total FTEs for student services? I know you gave it once, I
Yep.
apologize.
No, that's okay. It's not a number you have off the top of my
That are not contained within buildings, or
No,
the whole?
total.
I have 52 teachers this is district-wide, but there, you'll see there, the cost for them in each of the buildings. But the head count for staff that are special education staff, 52 teachers, 40.5 paraprofessionals, 5 team chairs, 5.5 clerical staff that are in the buildings. In addition to Stacy and myself, that's for special education. In addition, we have 6 nurses, 4 guidance or adjustment counselors, 5 school psychologists, 12 related services staff. Those are speech pathologists, occupational therapists, those kinds of positions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Before Mike left, and Peter, sit here, Mike's not coming back. Before Mike left, he specifically asked if you would spend a couple of minutes on RTI.
Sure. So I'll be very brief because you've heard RTI mentioned a number of times. RTI stands for Response to Intervention. It is an instructional framework. It is tied to special education in that we come from, and since I started in education in 1975, we've come from what I will call a binary system. Either kids receive regular education services only, or they receive regular education and special education services. And some kids only receive special education services. Response to intervention is a framework of instruction whereby essentially you're making sure, skill by skill, that kids get the skill. So I'm going to say the OA sound in 2nd grade. It's probably not 2nd grade anymore. It's probably kindergarten by now. But learning what the OA sound is in reading. If they don't get the OA sound today, they continue to receive tiers of instruction or layers of instruction until they get it. Why? Because kids don't all learn at the same rate. Some kids are going to get it first time. More kids are going to get it the second and third time they get it, and some kids need much, much more than that. So the framework of it does a couple of things, and I'll use the state of Georgia as an example. When I got my first training in RTI about 8 years ago, the state of Georgia went to a response to intervention program. Their special education numbers went from about 18% down to 7%. Because the regular education program, which RTI is a framework for regular education, reduced those numbers because the need simply wasn't there anymore for a very large number, particularly of kids with specific learning disabilities. So it's a framework of providing instruction in the regular education. It allows you a couple of things. The most important is that less children are involved in special education, and therefore those special education teachers are now becoming, over time, more interventionists. They're not at meetings, they're not writing IEPs, they're not writing progress reports. They're working with kids on that OA sound and being able to do it in a way that the kids get there much more quickly in terms of attainment of the skills. That's the big picture.
I was just going to add that this is one of those places where both the student services and curriculum departments come together, because one important part of an RTI system is tier 1 instruction, which happens by the regular ed teacher. It's one of our goals that we continue to work on, is to try to get that instruction from the regular ed teacher to satisfy the needs of 80% of the students, so that only 20% of the students need additional resources. We're not there. We have a lot of work. We continue to do a lot of fine-tuning and so forth to try to get there. But that's also a big part of our RTI system, is to have that initial instruction done so that students learn what is instructed.
And the one thing that I'll say, and this probably isn't popular, but it's the way that I think about it, is that it's the fix for No Child Left Behind, meaning that, for a long, long time, No Child Left Behind basically taught to the most neediest children in the classroom because they needed to make sure that they were at a certain level before they moved on. And what this does is it does exactly what parents are begging and screaming for us to do, which is continue to teach to here, you know, to keep moving. And this allows an interventionist to come in and work with that student one-on-one to be able to get them where they need to be. But still, the classroom moves on, and that's the way that it should be, instead of the years and years of teaching down to the most neediest child. So it's so important that we continue with this program, because not only is it the right thing to do, but it's proven. It's proven that it does work, and I think that this district is so needed. It's so needed in this district to have a program like this.
It also changes sort of the function of special education teachers over a period of time, that we almost need to look at a different name for them, because more and more of the percentage of their day will be devoted to providing tiered instruction than services for kids on IEPs. And they'll be spending less time, as I said, in meetings and testing and so forth. But they're really not just special education teachers anymore. They're really teachers that are providing supplemental supports for kids. Some of them special education and IEPs and testing and all of that. But more and more of their day, a larger percentage of their day, is providing tiered instruction for kids in the regular education program.
Yep.
Right.
And the key here is failing to fund it is penny wise, pound foolish.
Well, and the only other thing that I'll say is that I hear it all the time, let teachers teach. And,
Yes.
you know, why are we adding on all of these, you know, interventionists and things like that? It's not a lot of people. And what we're doing is exactly that. We're allowing teachers to teach. And when you have class sizes of 24, 25, 27 students, this is exactly the kind of thing that's needed, so then we can allow the teachers to teach. And without it, then we keep going back to a broken model, which is many children are not moving.
Although my problem with that is, because everything you said is right, except that I am really worried as the class sizes get higher, our ability to get the 80% to get it the first time around is made that much more difficult.
Well, I still don't believe in high class sizes.
I know you don't. No, my point is, the higher the class size, the more difficult it is for the 80% to get it, and when the 80% don't get it, it puts that much more of a burden on tier 2 and tier 3, et cetera, et cetera.
With that segue, we are going to move to Mrs. Janice Rotella, who is the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and I'm going to add, and assessment, because there are 3 legs to that stool.
Absolutely.
And so curriculum, instruction, and assessment, and as just the way I said at the beginning of the last presentation by Bob, this is a department that affects us K to 12. And through the curriculum, through instruction, and through assessment. Jan?
Thank you, Dr. Rabinovich. I'm going to start with our district improvement plan graphic. As some of you may know, we have to submit to the Department of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education, an annual district improvement plan. Each year, in the 8 that I've been here, Dr. Rabinovich has asked me to distill that down to a simple, straightforward graphic. And this is our graphic for FY13 that also impacts the FY14 budget. By state mandate, we have to have 2 overarching goals, a goal of professional practice and a goal of student performance. This is not only true of districts, this is true of every teacher and administrator in the district. And so the one this year under professional practice that will continue is implementing the new Massachusetts Educators Evaluation Program. This is something that we have been working on for 3 years. It is now by law implemented in all of our schools. And as you have heard several people allude to, and Mr. Sweat question, our principals, do we have the staffing to support it? We are making it work. And one of the ways we're making it work is that Dr. Rabinovich and I are doing all the training rather than pay an outside consultant. So then the cost savings of that is about $2,400 a day. So we are training and implementing. This is an evaluation system that requires weekly monitoring of all teachers, and as of next year ties teachers' evaluations to student performance. The second goal is a goal of student performance. You have heard about unfunded mandates. Well, the mandates are quite specific from the department. And we are mandated to increase students' academic achievement by these percentages, which don't seem huge until you consider the entire student body. 2% in ELA and 3.6% in math for this school year, by May of this year. And those percentages are set by the department in that they look at where we were as a baseline in 2011 and then subtract that baseline from 100% proficiency, and they have set these annual percentages as the rate by which we can narrow the gap between our district average and the state average. So it's not full proficiency, but it is bringing our average proficiency level to the same as the state's. And those are the goals that the state sets. Do I think we should strive for higher? Absolutely. I don't think average is ever good enough. But those are the goals that we are required to mandate, and these are the goals against which our teachers and our administrators are evaluated. Obviously, the overarching goal of the district is the mission to educate all students for life's responsibilities, challenges, and opportunities. And what that specifically means is that we must increase students' academic achievement through effective instruction and support of all students for their success in all academic and career endeavors. As Dr. Rabinovich has said, assessment is a big part of this. You're going to see it's a big part of one of our line items out of my office. However, I consider assessment to be embedded in curriculum and instruction, because if it is not embedded in all that we do, then we are teaching to a test, and that isn't the bottom line. The bottom line is successful academic achievement and using assessment for instruction and curriculum. As we move ahead and look specifically at curriculum instruction and assessment department, the organizational chart is probably the most simple one in the district, and that is because as director I have direct responsibility for a number of programs and initiatives, but the only staff who work directly for me, I will start to the right of the screen, are two secretaries, one who by and large focuses on data management and curriculum support, and the second who focuses on grants and accounts payable. She also supports professional development initiatives. District Technology Coordinator Terry DeFilippo now works out of my office, as Mr. Luzon has taken over the tech side, or the IT side, if you will, of technology. The curriculum coordination and integration side has moved into the curriculum department. So Terry and I had once upon a time worked very closely together, and now we are again, and bringing her more into the instructional side of technology.
So, let me just ask this. So, the infrastructure piece of it that's being managed out of Bob's office, who's doing that work? You?
We have 3 technicians and a secretary that work under Bob's direction right now.
Okay, so those individuals report to Bob,
That's
and
correct.
then Terry to Jan,
Yes.
and that is really from a software standpoint. So hardware, software. So
Right.
you're doing
Correct.
hardware, and she's
Right.
doing software.
And then when
So
we
it-
have our cabinet meetings and the 3 of us are in one room, that's when all of it gets integrated.
So where's Power Schools?
Power School is with Terry as part of instruction.
Thanks.
And then Pam Schluter is our district elementary math coach. As you have seen, our math scores were not good this year. There were a number of factors, one of which is bringing instruction, not just curriculum, but also instruction aligned with the new Common Core standards. And I'll be talking about that alignment. That is huge. And so in order to do that, we have brought in Pam as a coach. We used available funding through not being able to secure, for example, a French teacher, combining it with some grants, and we are able to have Pam for half a year, who is working on curriculum alignment in mathematics and is also going to be providing some embedded professional development and coaching for our teachers in math. These are important functions, but again, all of the work of curriculum instruction and assessment is done through collaboration with our other administrators in the district, not as direct lines. As we look at the need for additional supports, and I thought, there we go. The number of supports and initiatives across the district are particularly important when we talk about the initiatives that are required and mandated. And in order to implement them, there are a number of committees, vertical teams, and coaching teams, curriculum teams that work together. One of the most instrumental teams in the district is the instructional leadership team. And I have to say that I am particularly proud of them. This is an organizational piece that is recommended nationally, not just by our own state, and it is one that we have had in place for 5 years now. These are teachers who voluntarily sign up to serve on the instructional leadership team, pre-K through 12 representation. They receive a small stipend for work beyond the school day, and they provide both review and evaluation services of what we do in our curriculum, what we do instructionally, and what we provide with professional development. We also are mandated to have district vertical curriculum teams, as well as data coaching team, which is probably one of the newest ones and implemented this year. You've heard a lot about our instructional leaders. They are part-time instructional leaders, yet in that part-time 50% role, they observe, evaluate, and support through supervision and coaching teachers in each of the K-8 schools, so both elementary and middle school. And they are providing those documented reports as well. Another committee that both Dr. Rabinovich and I have been working on for 3 years, as I mentioned earlier, is the Race to the Top Steering Committee, which is also our supervision and evaluation subcommittee. That committee has worked to adapt the new Massachusetts Educators Evaluation Program and have that adaptation accepted by the state and then implemented this year. So those are some of the initiatives. One other thing I would like to point out is the secondary beyond school time programs. You heard Bob talk about beyond school time and that very active office under his responsibility that focuses on those pre-K through 8 programs. We have now been able to fully fund through grants beyond school time for 9 through 12. And I'll share more of those programs with you, but we have a coordinator in that who receives a stipend on, who is a full-time teacher, but also works with that program beyond school time. And I apologize for the failing voice here. And I'll pause for just, those are initiatives. I'm going to tell you more about how they're funded through both grants and LEA funds. These are just some of the individuals involved in these various initiatives and how they are organized and representative across the district. Just to give you an idea as you look at this chart, going across, that first one, instructional leaders, their stipend beyond their regular salary is fully paid for by Race to the Top grant. The beyond school secondary programs are fully paid for by academic support grants. The instructional leadership team stipends are, for the most part, paid for by grants. If they do curriculum writing, curriculum work, then some of that does come out of LEA.
Sorry, Jen, what do the instructional leaders receive a stipend for?
The instructional leaders receive a small stipend for their evaluation work that they do, the reports they write, the data collections they do beyond school time.
Beyond, mean after work?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. They also attend required training, both that are offered by the Department of Education and by the local DSAC.
Those are our ILs.
I understood.
The data coaching team, any work done beyond school time, we need to pay them at the stipended rate, curriculum rate, and that is paid for through grants. as is the stipend awarded to members of the Supervision and Evaluation Subcommittee. That is all paid for by Race to the Top grants. What is not shown here is there are additional stipends that are also paid by various grants for additional work beyond school time. So contractually, we have to pay people who work beyond the school day, and through Dr. Rabinovich's direction, any work that we are requesting of people beyond the school day that we are contractually obligated to pay, we only assign if we have grants to pay for it. So that makes sense. The budget objectives for curriculum and instruction are there on your screen, and you had them in your packet. They are pretty straightforward in that we provide training for educators in both the new evaluation program and in the Massachusetts frameworks and Common Core standards. I know you've heard a lot about the new standards. I can't emphasize this enough in that this is a huge shift for people in their instruction. The Common Core standards not only affect curriculum content, but they affect curriculum strategies and instructional strategies that the students will be required to know and be able to do on all of the new assessments. And that is why Dr. Rabinovich is stressing the assessment portion of it, because it truly is a mind shift. It's a shift in rigor that is greatly increased, and it is a shift in instructional manner and strategy. The curriculum budget by line item is here. You can see there have not been too many changes in increases. We are looking at mainly supporting teachers and students in their classrooms. The major changes I will be talking about in just a minute, but I want to show you, as you look at this budget, 80% of it goes to supporting curriculum supplies and supplementary resources for core alignment or for professional development and training, as well as the mentoring program. So you can see by this graph that while the budget for the curriculum and instruction department may be at $172,000, almost $173,000, virtually 80% of that goes back into the classroom and into our teachers. Also, under curriculum supplies and supplementary resources, there are a number of line items that you saw on the previous slide that, if I go back to it, you will see it says, if you go about 2/3 of the way down, curriculum supplementary program salaries, supplementary program supplies, supplementary program other expenses. Those three line items are all included in that blue portion of this graph. Those are
Late buses, please come to your late buses.
admittedly a small portion, but that is how we pay for Destination Imagination and Global Education. Some of the few programs we offer to our students who wish to go beyond the classroom have that enrichment and that acceleration. We are also, through grants, paying for pre-AP training for our teachers to provide acceleration here in the middle school. So if you take the budget, and if we took out the nearly $20,000 for Everett maintenance, then you see that most of the money is going into curriculum supplies and professional development and supplementary programs. It would be at 88%. Trying to go rather quickly here because of the hour of the day, but if you please interrupt me if you have any questions. There is a $5,000 increase in our expenditures for training and resources. This is quite admittedly to support the new Educators Evaluation Program for the coaching, mentoring, and training that we must support. And that $5,000 increase reflects approximately
$19,000 of grant reductions that we will have in FY14, specifically for implementing the Common Core, the Common Core state standards, and the new educators evaluation program. We're seeing that our training should be able to be scaled back, but we'll still need to have training in, so we're proposing that we make up 1/4 of the grant loss through an LEA account. This other account was added, Ms. Miranda added, Anna added the account for teacher mileage reimbursement. In previous years, we have paid for it, but we've taken it out of curriculum supplies. And she rightfully so said, no, that should not count as curriculum. So this is when the Department of Education or the local district and school support assistance center, as they are euphemistically called, require we send teachers to various trainings, workshops, and meetings. We have to reimburse teachers for mileage. We do require they carpool, and so that is what that line item was set up to do. And therefore, it comes out of this line item and not out of curriculum and instruction. Mr. Sweat's looking at me, so I didn't know. No question. No. Okay. As I said, I know I'm speeding through this. So these are part of the reason for our accounting is slight changes. You've heard the principal's dream. The ideal, I believe, for all of our teachers would be if we could have a district-wide coach for literacy and a district-wide coach for math. These would be individuals who are either employed as full-time teachers, and we provide a stipend for training beyond the school day, or in an ideal world, a retired teacher who could come in during the school day and provide that embedded support and training. I would not propose these positions unless I had grant funds to support it. And so this would be something we would be looking for in grant funds. And one of the things that grants are revenue, but they are definitely tied to regulations, and they all come with strings. So if we look at grant revenue, particularly in curriculum and instruction, it does add a few pennies to our piggy bank, but it is becoming more and more limited, and it is limited both because of the economic times we are in and because of the way that the Department of Ed is doing business. Looking at grant revenue, this is as of December 1st, and I know this sounds bizarre, especially from a business perspective. Having grown up working in my dad's business, I can tell you this is not the way to do business, but it is the way the Department of Education does business.
When you say Department of Ed, you mean state?
State.
Thank you.
Yes, and you'll see it's very different with federal. But what the state does is they receive X amount of dollars from the federal government for various initiatives that they have proposed. They plan to do most of that out of their offices in Malden. Then and so they just send out a very few grants in the fall. And you can see this fall they only sent out $52,000 in grants. At the end of the year last year, it was $108,880, almost $109,000. I will predict that by May, that $52,000 will be over $90,000. Because what the department does is, we got $1 million from the federal government, and we're supposed to do X, Y, and Z with our local school districts. We haven't got it done, and we have to show the federal Department of Education that we have put all these programs in place. So then they send out a slew of requests for proposals to the local districts and say, would you please consider doing these programs within these guidelines and show they're effective for kids from March to May. And they release the funds. Sometimes the funds are released from March to August 31st. And then we write programs. For example, if you look up here, you will see
so some of these programs don't require kids.
Oh, no.
Just being facetious.
Yes. Yes. No, they require kids. And this is summer academic support. is totally, this is one of the programs that I believe that one of the gentlemen asked about, is the cooperative school used in the summer? This past summer, it was used for both of those first two grants under summer academic support. One was specifically for tutoring, and one was for programs reaching out to at-risk students at risk for dropping out. The money became available in April. We had to design a program, get it approved by the state, find the kids, and have it up and running by June to go through August. So it's a very odd way of doing business. We do not propose any programs in any of these grants that require salaries. That's just ludicrous. These are strictly direct services to students, and the programs are only designed when the grants are made available, and then we move quickly to respond to those grants. Just to give you an idea, you see the Edwin Tablet Pilot Grant, 170-777. That $19,000, we received notice the third week of August, around the 20th, that that money was available. Wareham was eligible to apply for it for the express purpose of purchasing iPads for teachers to implement the new educators evaluation system and this new teaching and learning system that the Department of Ed did not yet have finished. But we could buy iPads for teachers to participate in those two programs. The grant request for proposal was released about August 20th, and it had to be turned in by August 28th. We did that, and we were one of 6 districts that received it, and we purchased those iPads.
Good work.
So it was a quick turnaround. A lot of people helped, and I want to, particularly one secretary and Miss Miranda, because in the middle I unfortunately fell and broke an ankle. So, but
Only 6 out of the entire Commonwealth received it.
yes, sir.
How many applied?
It was in excess of 20. So that's how grants
Congratulations.
work. Well, thank you. But we do. We keep looking for them. But I know, Jeff, you had asked about salaries. These grants, we don't even go with salaries. If they are summer or after-school programs, then we pay stipends out of them. But no positions are funded through them.
That's competitive grants.
That is competitive grants. Yes.
That's not the end of the story, though.
No, sir. Competitive grants totals to date, you can see in FY13, they have been cut drastically, but as I explained, I fully expect that to go up, if not 100,000, to just under 100,000 because of the way the department does their non-business practices. Massachusetts allocation grants. These are grants that are allocated, directed to the district for a number of reasons. Most of them because we have a high poverty rate, and we are considered a level 3 district because of our students' academic performance. So bad academic performance is a double-edged sword in that it gets us money, but it's not necessarily the way we want to get money. However, the first grant there, the 702 Transition to Kindergarten, this was particularly an important grant because it funded our planning for full-day K. We were at a point with our tuition program where the tuition was not meeting the cost of full-day K because we couldn't charge tuition to our families who were on free or reduced lunch, but they could come to full-day K. So we were showing a negative revenue with full-day K. So we were able to get the transition grant. We had a committee study it. We surveyed parents, received overwhelming support, and moved into it. The targeted assistance grants, which is the 143, the 220, and the 323, those come out in March, and you can see that we have received notice already on 2 of the 3 that are going to be available. And again, these are programs for students who need academic support, and we are working on writing those grants as I speak, and I will submit them with Dr. Rabinovich's approval, and we'll set up programs for the remainder of the school year and through the summer as well. The academic support grant, the 632, We have received that grant, and that is one grant that has gone down, but we still have a net increase since FY11. And that grant totally funds our Common Core Academy, which is an after-school program at the high school for students in grades 9 through 12 who are not meeting success in English, math, or science. In other words, they need severe tutoring, and they are receiving tutoring 2 and 3 days a week, depending on how many subjects they need support. Federal grants. These are also allocation grants. We have to submit proposals, and our proposals in these federal grants really are not in a competitive sense what gets us the money, but in a mandated sense, it's what has us receive the funding, because we are given an allocation. For example, our kindergarten enhancement grant went up from 81,000 to 120. Even with the 9C cuts, the least that will go down to is 114, and we are looking at the top rate of 118, but that's where we are with our kindergarten grant, and this is to support full-day K.
I'm sorry. Why do 9C cuts apply to federal grants?
Only the Commissioner of Education could explain that to you. I would make a conjecture, but I probably shouldn't do that on
In other words,
TV.
forget it, Jeff.
I believe it has to do what he feels the costs are to the Department of Education to oversee the grant.
So just to explain, the federal grants, what happens is that the state takes a first cut at it. They take a look at the money that are provided, that are supposed to go directly to districts, and they go, what should I charge for administrative fees? What do I need? What kinds of things can we do here? Because we know how to do it much better than any one of the local districts. So they get to make a determination first of what they're going to cut off the top, and then the rest comes to us. Want to pick up some pitchforks and pitchforks? And
You explained it better than I could. That's exactly it.
WCTV. Yeah.
Now, on this 701 to kindergarten grant, remember these are federal allocations, so there are federal mandates. So we are required to show that we support teachers and paraprofessionals for 12 full-day K kindergarten classrooms based on the number of students who are enrolled. Now, even at $120,000, that's impossible. So what we have done is, through some fancy math, is we have designated 4 teachers who were the additional classroom teachers, and we, through this grant, support approximately 10%, a little over, almost 11% of 4 teachers' salaries. And of the 12 half-time paraprofessionals, we support about 60% of those salaries through this grant, varying on contractual requirements. Now, that does not include any of the benefits or, such as health insurance. But basic salary, we're looking at, in order to meet the requirements, we show about a 10% salary support for 4 teachers and between 50 and 60% support of half-time paraprofessionals. The stimulus money is gone. The only other grant that has salaries coming out of it is the 140. This is Title II-A. We have both a 2A carryover and a 2, so there are 2 140 grants. This is called the Class Size Reduction Grant. Now, one would think that that meant you could pay for teachers fully if you're reducing the size of classes. However, the federal regulations, as enforced by Massachusetts Department of Education, say that we have to have set-asides. And those set-asides are specifically for providing training to teachers to be highly qualified in their content areas and license renewals, to support teachers in a mentoring program. And this year, there is a percentage that has to be set aside to support the new Educators Evaluation Program. And we have reduced the percentage we are setting aside to the lowest amount allowed by not charging the grant for consultation services or any of the vendors that the Department of Ed recommended to train people in the new education evaluation program. So by the superintendent and I doing all of the training, we are reducing our core cost and then indirectly increasing what we can support in teacher salaries. So between those two grants, about $140,000 is supporting 4 teacher salaries, or about 80% of 4 teacher salaries for class size reduction. So this is where we have the two-edged sword, if you will, that we would not receive any grant whatsoever if we did not include some teacher salaries for class size reduction.
But is this an example of 140,000 that will disappear the following year, but we'll still have the teachers to pay for?
No, it is not. The Title I and Title II grants are still in these are all federal budgets. So these are not grants that we would lose, either the kindergarten grant or the Title IIA grant. They can be reduced, as you heard Mr. Luzon say, the Title I grant has already been reduced. So losing funds would be qualified. We may lose some funds, but we would not, at this point, we have not lost funds. And then what the problem is you can see in FY12 we received $163,000. This year, $161 plus carryover, and that was money that wasn't expended. The problem is that, okay, we have 4 teachers for class size reduction. The teacher salaries went up more than the grant. So that's why there's a differential.
And if by some shocking thing the sequester actually happens and we lose 8.5%, and 8.5% is just sliced off the education budget, you don't expect to lose 8.5% of your grant?
Oh, I'm sure we will. Or so, I don't know that we'd lose the full 8.5%, because what mitigates our losses is our poverty level, but we'd lose a percentage of it.
Go ahead, thank you.
Okay. Race to the Top is another one of those programs that Rhonda referred to. The state received $250 million in Race to the Top funds. They took $125 million off the top. And the remainder was put out for competitive proposals. We submitted a proposal, and in southeastern Massachusetts, if I remember correctly, and Dr. Rabinovich, correct me if I'm wrong, we were the second highest district. Brockton is the only district in southeastern Mass that received more funding through Race to the Top than Wareham. So it was an insane grant. It's a 181-page long proposal, but it's a 4-year grant. We are currently at $82,000. All of it goes into student supports for academic improvement, Common Core alignment, and teachers training. We can pay stipends for training and coaching, but not salaries out of that grant. We have been also using small percentages of it up to the allowable limit to try to purchase some of the curriculum resources that our teachers need in the classrooms. So we've done some creative descriptions.
Janet, for FY14,
Yes.
will all the RTTT money be gone?
No, it will not.
So that will be the 4th year, so
That
you'll
will-
still have funds for FY14.
Yes. What we've been doing is a legal shell game, in that we needed to show in our initial proposal that the greatest amount of the grant would be invested in professional development in the 1st and 2nd year of the grant. We showed that in our proposal. We have not expended what we proposed in either of the first 2 years. So therefore, it gives us a carryover, and so we've been able to spread out the funds, and they've been approved every year. So that's how we will have, as you can see, this year we only had allocated $82,664, but we have a carryover from last year of almost $31,000, and I expect we'll do the same thing for next year, so that even though, as you can see, it reduces each year, I believe our allocation for next year is around $60,000, but we're hoping to increase that to be closer to 80 or 82.
I hope Arnie Duncan isn't watching this.
Well, we're staying within the letter of the law.
This isn't even a rounding error on his budget.
No. So that's where the revenue is coming, and that's how we're using it. I'm sorry.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but along with each one of these grants and the grants that you showed before, there are several reports that are due and ongoing reporting associated with each one of these grants after the fact, correct?
Oh, I haven't even begun. Yes.
All right. Well, the point that I just want to make is if you go, you don't have to go back to the slide, but when you go back to the 2 secretarial staff that are in that department, I know when I first looked at that, I said, what? 2 secretary, what? But they do the bulk of the reporting or the paperwork that goes along with it. And any other nonprofit or company, they would actually be considered grant managers, not secretarial staff. So I just think that it's important to make that point for folks that are here and also to the viewing public that when you take a look at administration and you see 2 secretaries for one department, that those individuals are also responsible for much of the legwork that goes into getting these grants as well as the reporting that's necessary to continue getting this money.
For example, and just to reinforce what you're saying, Rhonda, Race to the Top grant, each one of these grants actually require monthly reports as to expenditure of funds and products and what has been accomplished as far as professional development. And this is both for federal, state, competitive, and allocated grants. So that money those money reports have to go in monthly, and that is exactly what one of those secretaries does. In addition to that, on all of the grants now, a report needs to go in quarterly about a narrative report as to what has been purchased, what training has been provided, and what proof we have of effectiveness. So various evaluations have to be completed, interviews, and other documentation. And those quarterly reports, while I may do the writing, the submission, the editing, and the filing of all of that is done by the secretary. And if you go back, in order to complete these evaluations, obviously you need to have assessment data. And to go back to what Dr. Rabinovich said about being the Department of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, there's a whole nother software that we haven't mentioned called Inform. This is part of Power School. It is where we are able to conduct monthly or 6-week benchmark assessments on all of our students in literacy and mathematics. And one of my secretaries, not the one who does grants, the other one does all of that data management, uploads the data, and compiles those reports for our teachers, our principals, and for us to send back to the state and federal authorities to show how we are monitoring progress and how we're using that monitoring to adjust instruction. And so that the Inform software helps with our tiered instruction, with our RTI program, and more importantly, through the data coaching team, we are teaching our teachers how to use that data to adjust their instruction and make it more effective for students. So all of that is done in-house. We are required by law to have pre- and post-tests. We use standardized tests. We do not send them out to be scored at the cost of $40,000 or $50,000. Rather, the secretary in my office that does data management has downloaded all of the programs and has quite a background that we're very fortunate for, and does all of that test analysis in my office and send out the reports to the principals and teachers. So that adds a little more detail, but to further flesh out what Rhonda has referred to of the work that goes on in the office. Okay. There's just a comparison of federal grants, and as you can see, we are to the positive at the moment. I purposely wanted to end on a positive note, and that is why rainbow there is in the background. I think it is a sign of hope. Our goal is to continue to support and increase effective instruction. In order to do that, there has to be coaching and supervision and observation. Teachers are not unlike any other employee. There has to be monitoring to ensure effectiveness. Yes, that is part of the new educators evaluation program, but it is also the part of good training and professional development is to have an effective instructional staff. In order to increase student achievement, we must provide coaching above and beyond that supervision. We need to have teachers who are competent in not only the content of their subject matter, but in the teaching of their subject matter, especially with the new demands and the rigor of the Common Core state standards. We support the increased resources, and I will tell you that we have worked very hard, and I have, I guess, a little bit of a reputation among our publishing companies for negotiation. We do not purchase any textbook without also getting online access for free or minimal charge. And no textbook is purchased without online access. So we have the technology integration available. We use it as much as we possibly can with the infrastructure, with the increases and improvements that Mr. Luzon has overseen. We are going to be able to take even more advantage of those resources for our teachers and our students. Because when you get the online access to the textbook, you don't have to buy revised textbooks. The revisions are always there and they're available. So it makes that textbook always current and rather than being outdated. Additionally is providing the database Inform. This was purchased and has been implemented through training. We are continuing to support all teachers as they use Inform as a tool to design and adjust instruction as well as interventions. We are really working towards, as Bob mentioned, the idea that interventions take place first and foremost in the regular education classroom. We need to cut down the number of students in special education and still provide high-quality education, and that has to be done through a truly differentiated instruction within the regular ed classroom. One of the most exciting things that is happening and is funded through Race to the Top, as well as a partner grant we have with the University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth, is a STEM Academy. You have seen this as school committee members on a few slides before. I'm very excited to tell you that September 2013 will see the beginning of a STEM Academy at Wareham High School for 9th grade students. This will be a school within the school model. There will be a designated team of teachers. Existing high school teachers will be on this team who will provide an integrated curriculum in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and literacy. And we have, I just met with Mr. Palladino again over school vacation. We have a schedule in place. We are advertising for teachers working on the planning committee to implement that schedule, to design and to build that curriculum based on resources we have, as well as resources we will have available through these 2 or 3 grants. We have 3 professors from the University of Massachusetts at Dartmouth who are working with us and who will be guest lecturers in the program. We hope that it will be not only successful for 9th grade starting in September, but will grow with the students to be a 4-year academy within our own high school. That is where we are with curriculum and instruction as we continue to seek improvement for our students.
Any particular questions for Jan? All right, we have just 2 slides left to leave you with before you run out the door. So Jan, if you could click for me for the next one, please. The net school spending budget from what has been budgeted above what we had last year is $1,757,478. The next slide, please. Those increases come from collective bargaining for teachers, collective bargaining for specialists, collective bargaining for support staff, full-day kindergarten paraprofessionals that we're required to have, textbooks, which were cut out of the budget last year, technology, which was cut out of the budget last year, agricultural school tuitions that we must pay, though that's additional agricultural tuitions, our move-ins and out-of-district special ed costs that have increased, and other costs adds up to the $1,757,478. So if you ask me, what could you lose without losing anything, I would say that other cost, which is $275,000, which are basically supplies and other things from within. Anything else above that is meaning dismantling of programs and affecting the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the school system. Thank you very much, and as you think of these things, I am available for more questions, emails, and the such at my office. Mr. Sweat?
Just want to leave you with a thought. I shared this recently with Rhonda, because we all have to decide how hard we want to advocate for this budget and any other budget for which we have responsibility. When I graduated from high school in the late 1960s, what was true was, although I did go to college, I could have entered the middle class without going to college. As recently as 1979, I'm now about to give you some data that came out of the Mass Budget and Policy Center. As recently as 1979, the correlation between median wages across the country and education was actually surprisingly relatively weak. 1979. How weak? According to the Mass Budget and Policy Center, and this is a graph, and I'll be glad to send it to you if you'd like, it was only, for those of you who like statistics, 0.18 was the correlation, which is pretty weak. Okay? 1979, and all those points, by the way, are where we stood with this axis is the median wage for the state, all the dots are the state, and this axis is the percentage of the workforce with a bachelor's degree. Okay, got that? Bachelor's degree, median wage, correlation 0.18. This is 2011. The good news, even though median household income has really stagnated, the good news is, with the exception of Connecticut, Massachusetts is now #1 in median wages, and so #2, but they are #1 in the percentage of the workforce with a college degree. #1. But 45% of our workforce in Massachusetts has a college degree. If we are not preparing our kids to have a college degree with a correlation that is now tripled, it was 0.18, it is now 0.65, it's approaching 1. A direct correlation between education and wages. If we're not preparing our kids to go to college, they're just simply going to be lucky to have a middle-class lifestyle. That's why I feel it's a moral obligation to give all the people that you saw present today what they need in order to prepare our kids for that. And that's why yours truly is going to be fighting even harder than I did last year to get that for them. Thank you for listening.
Any questions?
Last year is obviously very involved in the school budget process, et cetera. A lot of the stories are saying we're still facing the same problem that we faced last year. Where do we come up with $1.8 million? The thing that I want to say, though, before I leave, is the one thing that I think I learned in the educational system as I went through it.
Thank you, Sam.
Was that if there was anything that sort of distinguished, and I don't want to sound sappy, our nation, was the fact that the American dream was built on the public education system.
Absolutely.
What we're doing now is we're letting our own future and the future of our children wilt away, particularly for this town. I came from a town that was very similar to this town. The only thing was they were very committed. And many of my peers who graduated from my high school have unbelievable success stories. Why? Because somebody gave us an opportunity, somebody put the resources there the hard way. They dug deep. I can't tell anybody what to do, but what I want to say is we have to recognize we're not talking about process, we're not talking about teaching staff jobs, we're not talking about reports that tell us how well we're educating, we're talking about lives. We're talking about children who 20, 30 years from now are going to look back and decide whether or not the town of Wareham did right by them. So I agree with you. This year I'm going to fight on the school side. Last year I went for the balanced budget in hopes that the town might see things a little differently. All right, this year it's time to step up. There's no more room to kick the can down the road. Okay, and I think everybody in this room jointly, including our new town administrator, all right, has to take a stand with the citizenry of this town and say, look, we cannot afford to have an unqualified labor force on which we think we can build an economic base that will lower our tax rates. You can't do it. If you can, please write a book, because I want to know another millionaire, because it will sell literally billions of books. Didn't mean to get on the soapbox, but
Feel free.
That was beautiful. Mr. Sweat, I just want to, on behalf, I know I speak for the rest of the committee, it was nice to sit in the room today with members of the FinCom, the Board of Selectmen, and Town Administrator, our special guest, and all see the total process. So I want to thank Dr. Rabinovich and his entire staff. They all did an outstanding job in presenting their cases, and hopefully all of us can bring the message back to the community. Thank you.
And this was televised and will be playing on our local cable television station. So anybody that wanted to see it and couldn't be here today, ask them to spend the time and watch it.
And in Wareham, we need to avoid the fiscal cliff.
Special thanks to Derek for being here all day.
Yes, and putting in the time. I really appreciate it, because I know how busy you are.
We'll give you a stipend.